in the best interest of public safety and the public good.
Will the clerk also read the first group of witnesses to testify?
Michael Pinnigan, Director, Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. Stephanie A. Bradley, Managing Director, Evidence-Based Prevention and Intervention Support Center, Epicenter. Chikima Fulmore Townsend, Executive Director, Philadelphia Youth Network.
I want to welcome all my panelists that are experts in their respective field. Would any of you like to give an opening statement before we begin today's testimony?
Sure. I just wanted to say thank you for coming, for attending, and for giving us your best ideas. Criminal justice clearly is an important and vital issue now that the City of Philadelphia needs to look at, and your interest, your input, and your support is critical at this point. So thank you.
For housekeeping purposes, everything is being transcribed, and we're on television. So state your name for the record so we have that. And begin your testimony.
Okay. Good morning. I am Mike Pennington, Director of the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention at the Commission on Crime and Delinquency.
Can you pull that up a little closer?
Okay. Thank you. On behalf of Chairman Josh Shapiro, I would like to thank you for inviting PCCD to be part of this hearing and for the opportunity to share some of PCCD's efforts around delinquency and violence prevention, as well as Pennsylvania's juvenile justice system enhancement strategy. The mission of the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, or PCCD for short, is to enhance the quality, coordination, and planning within the criminal and juvenile justice systems, to facilitate the delivery of services to victims of crime, and to increase safety in our communities. The demand for programs and interventions that are effective in preventing adolescent problem behaviors has never been greater. PCCD has a track record in leading the development and implementation of research-based approaches that have proven successful in preventing youth violence, delinquency, substance abuse, educational failure, and many other problem behaviors. The Center for the Study of Prevention of Violence at the Institute of Behavioral Science, University of Colorado Boulder, designed and launched a national youth prevention initiative in 1996 with funding assistance from PCCD to identify and replicate violence, delinquency, and drug prevention programs that have been demonstrated as effective. This project, initially called Blueprints for Violence Prevention, identified prevention and intervention programs that met a strict scientific standard of program effectiveness. Today, Blueprints has been rebranded as Blueprints for Healthy Youth Development and funded by the Anna E. Casey Foundation. With funding from the Casey Foundation, outcomes have been expanded to include not only problem behavior, but also education, emotional well-being, physical health, and positive relationships. It is well established that the presence of certain key factors in the life of a child places that child at increased risk of many adolescent problem behaviors. These factors include certain characteristics of individual communities, schools, and families, as well as characteristics, attitude, and behavior and peer relationships of a child. The identification, assessment, and prioritization of these risk factors are a key aspect of the Communities That Care, or CTC for short, Risk-Focused Prevention Initiative framework that is the foundation of PCCD's comprehensive prevention strategy. CTC is a public health approach that seeks community involvement to identify and address a community's local risk factors. The CTC framework uses the social development strategy, which is a research-based model that organizes known protective factors into a guiding framework for building positive futures for children, assesses risk and protective factors, matches risk and protection profiles with tested effective programs, and promotes positive youth development by reducing risk and enhancing protection. The CTC social development strategy helps communities assess and prioritize certain risk factors in communities and utilize effective programs to address those needs. PCCD's nationally recognized Resource Center for Evidence-Based Prevention, Intervention Programs and Practices was created to support high-quality and effective juvenile justice intervention and delinquency prevention programs. The ongoing work of the Resource Center is a collaborative effort with the Departments of Human Services, Drug and Alcohol Programs, Education, the Juvenile Court Judges Commission, the Council of Chief Juvenile Probation Officers, and many other stakeholders. The Resource Center has three main focus areas: supporting evidence-based programs, incorporating research-based principles and practices into local programming, and supporting community planning efforts and implementation of effective programs. Collecting and analyzing data is an important part of identifying problem areas to address. PCCD conducts a biennial survey of school students in the 6th, 8th, and 10th and 12th grades to learn about their behaviors, attitudes, and knowledge concerning alcohol, tobacco, other drugs, and violence. The Pennsylvania Youth Survey is sponsored and conducted in the fall of odd-numbered years by PCCD. The data gathered in the page serves two primary needs. First, the results provide school administrators, state agency directors, legislators, and others with critical information concerning the changes and patterns of use and abuse of harmful substances and behaviors. Second, the survey assesses risk factors that are related to these behaviors and the protective factors that help guard against them. This information allows community leaders to direct prevention resources to areas where they are likely to have the greatest impact. The 2015 survey was funded by PCCD, Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs, Department of Education, and this funding enabled us to offer this at no charge to any school or district. There are currently 351 school districts participating in Pennsylvania. PCCD, in partnership with the Department of Human Services, supports the Penn State University's Epicenter to provide ongoing training and technical assistance and support to jurisdictions around the state to implement evidence-based prevention and intervention programs. PCCD has had a long and successful partnership with the Prevention Research Center at Penn State. Dr. Stephanie Bradley is here today, who's the managing director of the Epicenter, to provide more details on the work of the Epicenter. The Epicenter has developed the capacity to estimate the significant return on investment of PCCD evidence-based programming based upon the highly regarded approach of the Washington State Institute for Public Policy. The goal is to focus on programs that give us the most confidence in achieving better statewide outcomes, coupled with a more efficient use of taxpayer dollars. Annually, PCCD provides funding opportunities to support evidence-based programming for children and families. In addition, the Commonwealth continues to aggressively pursue implementation of Pennsylvania's Juvenile Justice System Enhancement Strategy, or JJSES for short. JJSES is a commitment to working in partnership to enhance the capacity of our system to achieve its balanced and restorative justice mission by employing evidence-based practice with fidelity at every stage of the juvenile justice process, collecting and analyzing data necessary to measure the results of these efforts, and with this knowledge, to continuously improve the quality of our decisions, services, and programs. The Juvenile Court Judges Commission is coordinating the implementation of this strategy with the assistance of a leadership team of Chief Juvenile Probation Officers, PCCD, and other staff from the Juvenile Court Judges Commission. Essential to the underlying philosophy of JJSES is the concept that juvenile justice interventions and programs are considered effective when they reduce a juvenile's risk to reoffend, and that the application of evidence-based practices will enhance public safety. Equally important as the tenets of JJSES are the concepts of fundamental fairness and structured decision-making as a tool to help system professionals make consistent, appropriate, effective, and fundamentally fair decisions. The Pennsylvania juvenile justice system now utilizes the youth level of service case management inventory, which is a valid risk assessment instrument that measures 42 risk need factors within the following 8 domains. Just a couple of those are prior and current offenses, attitudes and orientation, personality and behavior, peer relations, family, and a number of others. The YLS is critical in helping develop recommendations to the court based on the YLS results, including the identified risk and needs of each juvenile, and the development and implementation of the case plan based on the YLS results, which targets services to meet the risk and needs of each juvenile. The availability of YLS scores as a result of our system enhancement strategy is becoming increasingly important to judges in crafting, implementing, and monitoring dispositions in juvenile delinquency cases and in complying with both statutory and procedural court rules. The development of statewide and county-specific baseline recidivism rates is a particularly noteworthy accomplishment. Pennsylvania is one of the few states with the capacity to develop information of this type. For the purposes of this research, recidivism is designed as a subsequent adjudication of delinquency or conviction in criminal court for a misdemeanor or felony offense within 2 years of case closure. The 18% recidivism rate for cases closed in 2011 represents an 18% reduction from the 4-year average recidivism rate of 22% for cases closed from 2007 through 2010. This dramatic reduction in the statewide rate for cases closed in 2011 is especially significant because 2011 was really the first year we could realistically assess the impact of our system enhancement strategy. In order to improve services to youth in the juvenile justice system, we are piloting the Standardized Program Evaluation Protocol, which is SPEP for short. SPEP is validated data-driven rating scheme for determining how well an existing program matches research evidence for the effectiveness of that particular type of intervention for reducing the recidivism of juvenile offenders. The SPEP process includes provider interviews and a review of data from the Juvenile Court Judges Commission's Juvenile Case Management System database, which has been used to identify statewide utilization rates of delinquency service providers. Probation officers and service providers jointly contribute to the SPEP assessment process and work with consultants at the epicenter to create and implement performance improvement plans. Cooperation throughout this process is deepening system-wide understanding of provider programs and services. As a result, judges and probation officers can more easily refer the right kids to the right programs for the right amount of time. Another important initiative is our Pennsylvania Academic Career and Technical Training Initiative. PACT is an interagency initiative designed to further develop job readiness, academic and employability skills for system-involved youth. The PACT standards are built on the balanced and restorative justice principle of offender competency development. Provider affiliates focus on providing youth with training that will qualify them for jobs in the areas of industry growth that will lead to careers with sustainable wages. This work begins while youth are in placement and continues when they return to their communities. Recent trends regarding juvenile violent crime arrest rates, juvenile delinquency dispositions, juvenile delinquency placements, and detention center admissions all serve to confirm the efficacy of the evidence-based practices that now form the foundation of Pennsylvania's juvenile justice system. One of our emerging priorities is increasing the role of PCCD in coordinating and implementing a comprehensive delinquency and violence prevention strategy for the Commonwealth. One of our major goals is to make communities safe through collaboration and targeted investments. Moving forward, PCCD will be working collaboratively with our state and local partners to continue to improve the coordination of delinquency and violence prevention-related initiatives across the Commonwealth, as well as continued implementation of our juvenile justice system enhancement strategy. PCCD is committed to investing in proven, effective programs to address violence, delinquency, and other problem behaviors. As I mentioned before, PCCD has also invested in a statewide infrastructure through the epicenter to provide training and technical assistance to communities and practitioners. Dr. Bradley will further explain the work of the epicenter shortly. Some of the specific funding streams that are available annually to support local initiatives include state violence prevention program funds, state substance abuse, education and demand reduction funds, federal Title II juvenile justice and delinquency prevention funds, and federal justice assistance grant funds, which we call our JAG funds. Currently, the federal JAG funding announcement is open, and up to $5.4 million is available to support several objectives. Some of these include increase the efficacy of state and local planning efforts through interagency collaboration, promote and support evidence-based programs and practices, promote the appropriate use and measure the effectiveness of promising approaches and dispositional alternatives, promote the implementation of reentry programs and practices, and engage schools, communities, and families in violence prevention and increase the support services provided to those who have been victims of violence. Applications are due June 24th, and eligible applicants are local units of government and private nonprofit organizations. PCCD expects to fund approximately 25 to 30 grants. Thank you for the opportunity to present here today, and I look forward to our partnership moving forward.
So much for our instructions of abbreviation. We appreciate, however, all of that information. Is it the will of the panel that we wait to hear the first panel testify and then ask questions, or we can go in one at a time and begin questions? What do you guys think?
I know Mike had to leave.
Oh, you have to leave.
I'm okay.
So we'll make that exception. Okay. He has,
okay right now.
yeah, I understand he has an important date to go to his son's baseball game, is it?
Yes.
We won't hold you from that.
That's okay, I have time.
So a couple of things. Number one, I know what PCC does. I am a member of the body. For people listening at home that don't, how much, so it's a governor's commission that deals with crime and juvenile delinquency. I'm glad to hear that you said that we are measuring things for outcome-based accounting and accountability, which I think everybody has moved and evolved towards. So are we measuring what our impact is in particular areas, whether it is witness compensation or juvenile programs? We are saying, here's what it was before, and here's what it is now.
Yes, and just to, for those folks that are here, PCCD is really responsible for justice policy planning and coordinating around the Commonwealth. So we administer a number of state and federal funding streams, facilitate delivery of services to victims, and work on criminal justice and juvenile justice system improvement efforts, and we also do some research and evaluation. And so that's one of our priorities, is measuring the effectiveness of what we do. We have a limited amount of funds, right now, and we want to make sure what we support, what is improved by our commission, has an impact out in the communities. So we're measuring system-wide recidivism rates, but we're also, and I think Dr. Bradley is going to talk a little bit about this, that with our prevention programming, we've developed standardized program measures, and we're also measuring the impact, the return on investment, that we are making. We've done that for a number of years now. So we want that feedback. We want to see how we're doing with communities, and we want to provide technical assistance to communities to help them understand what programs may be effective for addressing particular problems in communities. I mentioned our kind of CTC framework. What I really like about that is it's unique to every community. It's based on what those communities' needs and issues. It's not just a model that is good for certain things. It is based on what the community's needs are, what those risk and protective factors are for each community. And, those are some of the things that we're doing, but we definitely measure the effectiveness of what we do and want to make sure that what we fund is having a positive impact out in the communities.
So, again, you deal with 66 counties. You deal with a whole spectrum of crime and justice that you help law enforcement do, update equipment. You help victims receive relief. You help returning citizens try to find their way back into society. You deal with prevention. You deal with all of the things in the continuum of justice. You also do grants. How much is your annual RFP grant allocation that you've been administering from the feds to the state to municipalities around the Commonwealth, roughly?
Well, I can speak from our juvenile justice office. We receive approximately $1.5 million in federal Title II funds. Our violence prevention programs, we recently put out about $2 million for violence prevention programming. And as you said, we have a number of other federal funding streams. I don't have those off the top of my head, but I'd be glad to provide a list of those that might be beneficial to the group.
I just wanted to give, including the youth component, but I wanted everyone on the panel to understand this is a valuable resource that is, in my opinion, underutilized. Everybody in the audience, too, that you can go after particular grants that deal with that continuum. And I don't know to the degree that Philadelphia has kind of participated in the way that it should, considering when you look at this state's crime picture, there's us there's Pittsburgh, and I think Harrisburg is probably in the middle of the state, probably contributing a lot of the criminal justice work. So now, with that being said, youth, we have a situation where we have young people literally being what are called crash dummies, and these older guys are convincing them that if they commit a violent crime, that because they're juveniles, nothing will happen to them, and that if they commit that crime, they'll be let out in 2 years. This is not true. This is a problem. As we start to codify programs for this summer and beyond to identify ways to intervene, it is through your office, again, that we submit our RFPs.
Yes, well, it's determined by our, state advisory group that we have, and depending on the amount of money we have, we set priorities just each year to, depending on how much funding we do receive, then we decide how much we can put out for competitive opportunities for funding. And we also, and I do want to mention that, we do provide technical assistance, in training, a lot of that's through the epicenter, so we would be happy to come to Philadelphia to sit down to talk about some of our strategies and what may be helpful for you moving forward. So that's a critical resource, and that's something that the Commission really does, is to try to facilitate training and technical assistance to really, because we need to hear from you, because we need to make sure what we are funding is targeted to needs of communities. So we have a lot of subcommittees at PCCD because we want local practitioners and experts and folks that are dealing with the issues to give us feedback on what is needed out there so we can direct our money to, the areas that need it most.
Yeah, there was a day reporting center we visited in Pittsburgh that was a one-stop shop for young people. And they picked the kids up from warring neighborhoods, brought them to the center, worked on their homework, worked on their life issues, took them back home, went and did school visits, went and did all those kinds of little things. And I just thought that if we could replicate that in Philadelphia, well, we need to replicate it in every neighborhood. And if we could, the way they did it just had so many good outcomes. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yes, I'm familiar with day evening reporting centers. I'm not sure if I'm familiar with the specific one that you are mentioning, but I probably am, but I just want to make sure I'm not mixing it up with something else.
Are you familiar? You seem to have nodded in the appropriate.
I'm familiar with it.
Can you pull the mic and say who you are?
Oh, I'm sure. This is Shakima Fulmore-Townsend. I am the president and CEO of the Philadelphia Youth Network, and I'm familiar with the evening reporting center strategy.
So do we have that in Philly?
I think we have at least two.
We had two. I don't know how they are performing now, but I know there was a huge movement in partnership with the Department of Human Services to implement 2 centers locally.
And, okay, well, I'm going to put a pin in that, but that kind of program where you have case management, where you have intervention, where you have peer counselors that relate to young people and actually can communicate in an effective way is what I'd love to see more of in neighborhoods. And Pittsburgh is not Philly. We have a much more acute problem, in my opinion. But if we could replicate that success, if we have it here, in key hot zones, if you would, for lack of a better terminology, that's the kind of thing that I think gets down into the weeds, if you would, to try to create prevention. Does any other panel members have questions?
Yeah, I do. Wilfredo Rojas. I worked in corrections for 24 and a half years, and I worked with the juvenile population at the House of Correction. One question I have. You talked about priorities, and we tend to focus a lot on inmates, on juveniles that are already going through the system. When you talk about priorities, what about children who are children of murder victims? Who are apt to, the data shows that a lot of them will go out and commit crimes because of what they're going through.
This is Stephanie Bradley from the Prevention Research Center at Penn State. Mike asked me to sort of contribute to this, to the answer here. There are 2 programs that are currently funded by PCCD that have strong evidence of effectiveness of working with children who have experienced trauma. One is trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, TFCBT. The other is family bereavement program. Both of these programs work with, one in particular deals with youth who have lost a parent or both parents, and it's a therapeutic process that they go through with a counselor. Trauma-focused CBT is not specific to death, but requires that the youth has a known experienced trauma, which of course the murder of a parent would certainly qualify there. So those are 2 programs that are currently funded by PCCD that the Epicenter provides training and technical assistance support for. So communities could pursue grant funding from PCCD and work with us to implement both of those models.
What about communities of diverse cultures?
The programs are relevant for those as well.
And it's a
Is that your
priority
question?
across the Commonwealth?
I can't speak to the priorities. That's more a question, I think, for Mike.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that we support through our funding streams. I mean, we have a number of different programs to deal with a number of different areas, and so, the JAG funding announcement that's out currently right now provides funding for a wide range of initiatives across the spectrum to support a number of different populations across criminal justice, juvenile justice, prevention, reentry, folks that solutions for mental illness, substance abuse issues. So there's a number of areas. It's pretty wide to what that funding will support.
I'd also like to add something else to that, if I could. PCCD over the last couple of years, while Mr. Pennington was at Bureau of Juvenile Justice Services, had been working on a number of specific targeted outreach efforts through the Epicenter to recruit high-risk communities to adopt the Communities That Care Coalition model, which I think also gets to your question about priorities in high-risk areas.
With respect to your intervention, therapeutic intervention, do any of your programs utilize the multi-systematic therapy?
Yes, absolutely. MST is a program that's been well supported in the state for a number of years. The Epicenter provides training and technical assistance support for that program model. We work with about 51 MST teams across the state.
Last question. What has been the effectiveness of any residential or community supervision programs with your juveniles? What's been your experience? What does the data say?
Well, I can speak to the recidivism rates. I mean, I don't have the numbers right here on specific like residential providers or anything like that, but the statewide recidivism rate is 18% from cases closed in 2011. That's all cases. But I think what you probably will find is kids that are in residential place, the recidivism rates are a little bit higher because the kids that are more higher risk are the ones that are in out-of-home placement, or based on, the counties that use the YLS risk need assessment. Those kids that are in out-of-home placement should be kids that are higher risk, moderate to high risk of reoffending.
So do I gather then that residential incarceration, it has not proven to be very effective with juveniles?
No, I'm not saying that. I mean, it can be very effective. I'm just saying that the strategy, well, let me back up a little bit. From 2007 to 2014, delinquency placements based on a new allegation have decreased over 40%. So what we're trying to do is keep kids out of the system that are lower risk, divert them into community-based services, and reserve for kids that are out of home placement would be for higher risk levels of kids. Now we still, I'd have to get those recidivism rates, but what I'm saying is they may not be as low as kids, that aren't in like secure residential placement facilities. But, and we have some very good programs out there, but the recidivism levels may not be as low as other programs for low to moderate risk kids.
Any other questions?
I just had one. I'm Ann Schwartzman with the Pennsylvania Prison Society. One of the issues that we've looked at over the years is the impact on children when parents are incarcerated. And I'm just wondering if you're aware of any programs or if there's anything that PCCD might be looking at or the Epicenter now to really focus on kids who might be at risk whose parents are away.
Do you want to say, go ahead.
Well, I would go back to, for one, the trauma-focused CBT, because that removal of a parent, incarceration of a parent is also a trauma. We have worked in the past with Big Brothers Big Sisters programming that focuses specifically on children of incarcerated parents. Certainly, I think that we could be looking into the evidence base around what programs are out there for youth who are experiencing that specific type of family circumstance. But those are the two that sort of pop into my mind most immediately. And I'd be happy to look further into that and provide feedback to the council if you're interested.
If I may, Amici, I believe it is?
Amachi.
Amachi,
Yeah,
I knew it was one of those. Are you familiar with them? And they deal with that whole generational issue. And most recently, Councilman Johnson and I left Graterford and saw a group of inmates that want to reconnect with their family and their children in particular through teleconferencing with the school district, which is something that they're trying to reestablish contact, begin to be a part of their lives. It's in the beta testing form and very formula, but I do think it may have useful benefit when you start talking about individuals starting to care and reconnect with their community and beginning to be at least a positive influence on their lives. So, two that I know about.
I had a question. Reverend Adan Mairena from the West Kensington Ministry. Related to my colleague's question here, do you or is there any evidence-based studying? Is there anything related to working with schools where children are attending whose parents are incarcerated? Is there any data? Is there any connection at all whatsoever? In terms, are there any programs? Is there anything where organizations like as yourself or any organizations identifies children in schools whose parents are incarcerated, and is there any type of relationship?
I'm not entirely sure I understand your question, but it sounds like maybe
Like
you're
I have
asking-
children whose parents are in jail, right?
Yeah.
They attend our public schools, but it seems like the schools don't know.
Yeah.
The counselors don't, if they have a counselor, they don't know. And is there anything out there that exists that could address that type of situation?
I think there are probably a few things that could. One would be potentially, for one, the Pennsylvania Student Assistant Programs, the SAP teams. I know they operate sort of differently in different schools, so it's not standardized, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's evidence-based. But those teams are designed to help support and intervene with youth who are having all manner of problems. So that's one possible resource. Another could be communities and schools, which is a bit like case management within the school system itself. So there's typically a case manager that works within the school and connects youth with needed resources without in the community. That is something that that's something that a school has to decide they want to bring into their system. It's not just a standard part of PDE or something like that. But those community workers basically connect those youth with needed resources. So I would think they would be a way to identify if there were a parent incarcerated and a youth needing additional support. I had another one, but the sirens are a little distracting. I forgot the third. Sorry. I can't think of what that was. Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay. All right. You're ready for your testimony.
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Stephanie Bradley. I'm a prevention scientist at the Prevention Research Center at Penn State University, and I'm the managing director of the Epicenter, which stands for the Evidence-Based Prevention and Intervention Support Center. Epicenter is funded by PCCD and the Department of Human Services Office of Children, Youth, and Families. It's absolutely my pleasure to be here today and an honor to have the opportunity to provide testimony to the council this afternoon. For the record, I had previously submitted written testimony after looking at all of the testimony that was delivered on March 28th. I didn't look at all of it, I looked at some of it. After looking at that, I revised my testimony because I felt like it would be important to focus my part today on talking about prevention. So I'm happy to submit my written testimony after the fact. I apologize, you guys don't have it right now. So I'm here today to talk about prevention because prevention rarely gets enough coverage in testimonies and in strategic plans. And there is often the scenario where prevention is actually misunderstood. And so I think it's important to talk about these things a little bit this afternoon. Prevention is not about intervening after a problem has occurred. Prevention is about keeping problems from even arising. And at its best, it's a data-driven, planful, upstream approach to protecting youth and communities and promoting their positive development. Prevention programs can actually prevent issues of violence, substance use, depression, truancy, and school dropout, as Mr. Pennington already highlighted. And PCCD and the Epicenter work very closely in partnership to promote a public health approach to prevention, which relies on gathering data on risk and protective factors, identifying effective programs and practices to address those issues. So I would like to share one example that highlights how prevention works. And a key strategy for prevention is through children developing social emotional competency. Social emotional competency means that youth are able to interact well with their peers and others, and they're able to understand and manage their emotions appropriately. Research has shown that kindergartners who were rated high in social emotional competence were more likely to earn a high school diploma, get a college degree, and have a full-time job by the time they reached adulthood. In contrast, kindergartners rated low in social emotional competency were more likely to be arrested in early adulthood, to use marijuana, and to need public housing support. PCCD provides funding for the highest rated and most well-researched social emotional learning curriculum available, which is PATHS. This stands for Promoting Alternative Thinking Strategies. PATHS is a school-based program delivered in kindergarten and elementary schools, and it targets multiple risk and protective factors. Youth who participate in PATHS show less aggression, less conduct disorder, lower internalizing, reduced ADHD symptoms, and higher test score proficiency in reading, writing, and math. We estimate that there's a $24 return on investment for every $1 spent on PATHS programming. Using CTC as another example of how prevention works and what prevention looks like, I just wanted to add a couple of points about CTC, which Mr. Pennington already briefly discussed. CTC draws its strength and effectiveness from using this public health approach. And in Pennsylvania, the CTC process specifically relies on using the Pennsylvania Youth Survey. This is a survey that Mr. Pennington already also described. Research on CTC has shown that youth in CTC communities fare better than youth in non-CTC communities. They're less likely to be negatively influenced by their peers. They're less likely to be involved in delinquency. They show higher academic achievement and better engagement in school. Recent estimates of CTC suggest a $10 return on investment for every $1 invested in CTC. So prevention works by addressing the underlying causes of problem behaviors as opposed to targeting the specific problems themselves. In these examples, both PATHS and CTC are preventative in that they're not intervening on problems, rather they're focusing on targeting broad risk and protective factors. Both CTC and PATHS, among others, have demonstrated their effectiveness at preventing multiple problems in rigorous research trials. And this topic leads me to the topic of evidence-based programs. Mr. Pennington described the Blueprints programs. These are the original evidence-based programs that have substantial research evidence behind them that demonstrate their effectiveness in reducing youth problems. One of the things that we're concerned by in more recent years with calls for accountability and push for evidence-based programming is that many program developers are now adopting the term evidence-based but not actually meeting the criteria of having been researched and well evaluated. So this does a disservice to all of us because it diverts limited resources away from programs that are based in sound developmental research and prevention science that have demonstrated short and long-term impact on youth, families, and communities. And it funnels those resources into programming for which there are no evaluations, no rigorous demonstration of effect, and therefore offer little to no proof in their ability to actually improve outcomes. So in the process of doing research, we learn a lot about what we don't know. We find programs that make things worse and not better. We learn about what doesn't work and why. We go back to the drawing board again and again. Often this process is painfully out of step with the problems that are occurring, with the number of problems that we want to address, and the passion that we have for addressing those problems. So as researchers and prevention scientists, when we find something that does actually work, we want to make sure that policymakers and service providers are aware of those programs that do work, which is why we started using the term evidence-based in the first place, and why programs like program registries like Blueprints for Healthy Youth Development exist. So I'll describe briefly a little bit about what we do at the Epicenter. A key focus of our work is assisting policymakers and community service providers and others to understand what works, what doesn't work, how to choose programs, how to run them well in their communities so that you get the results that you're looking for. We provide free training and technical assistance for 18 different prevention and intervention programs that have strong research evidence of effectiveness, several of which have been brought up this afternoon. Each year through the State Violence Prevention Program budget, PCCD provides funding for communities to adopt and implement these programs, and Epicenter support is included in that funding. We also provide free training and technical assistance for CTC. We provide support to communities in building their readiness to adopt the model, engage key stakeholders, and move those stakeholders through the CTC process. We regularly work with communities who are interested in learning more about developing a coalition in their area, and PCCD regularly provides fundings for CTC. Epicenter also conducts a statewide gap analysis for PCCD using data from the Pennsylvania Youth Survey, juvenile court data like disposition and recidivism data, and hopefully soon the YLS Youth Level of Service data. And using those data, we submit new program recommendations to PCCD. So I will wrap up my testimony with two hopeful calls to action. One, the city could further inform its prevention planning efforts by enrolling in the next administration of the Pennsylvania Youth Survey. The PAYS provides a rich source of information on youth risk and protective factors, which are valuable data for driving prevention decisions. The PAYS provides insights into a wide array of risk and protective factors related to psychosocial well-being and important youth relationships. These data would also enable our gaps analysis to further account for youth and family needs in Philadelphia. Two, please consider the Epicenter as a readily available resource to the City of Philadelphia for achieving your prevention goals. I thank you very much for your time and the opportunity to provide testimony today.
I always make reference to the fact that on the Delaware, if 200 whales ran ashore and died, every marine biologist from around the world would come and try to figure out why. When young people are killing themselves at the rate that they are you the marine biologist that actually kind of evaluate what's working, what's not working, and what ways we should kind of tailor our...
Yes.
So finally,
yes.
Okay, I get to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
So when there are some programs that are cookie cutter, I would imagine, that can be applied all over the Commonwealth. Some are unique to urban areas, and others are unique probably even to neighborhoods. Are you able to codify like which ones work and why?
Yes, absolutely. That's the
please?
whole field of prevention science itself, and the work that we are involved in both at the Prevention Research Center and at the Epicenter. So we have a lot of expertise in terms of understanding programs that do have research and programs that don't. We also very much understand the core principles of change that improve youth relationships, improve youth attitudes, those kinds of things. So if a program doesn't have that research evidence behind it, that doesn't mean that we can't go in and look at it and develop some reasonable sense of confidence in this program is well designed and probably would work, and we would recommend an evaluation to wrap around with that. And we're also able to look at program components and say that may not work, and this in fact might be harmful for kids.
So, and the reason I ask that, and I won't belabor the point, but I'm a product of the House of Umoja, which was a youth-based program for at-risk youth at the time of gang war and conflict. If we could have put it in a bottle and shipped it around, we would have. But what we came to the conclusion, unfortunately, that it was based on Sister Falaka Fatah and David Fatah's personal relationship and connecting with kids, and you could not kind of make that a McDonald's hamburger and do it that way. So I really am going to want to draw upon your resources to find out things that are unique as a gem, and those differently can be applied in different areas.
Right.
Because if we can replicate success, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to replicate failures.
Yeah.
So that kind of measurement, I think, is essential. So,
Absolutely, and I think the core of what you're describing is good mentoring. And there's a lot of research evidence around mentoring being a very effective way to prevent problems and to intervene on problems. So we may not be able to replicate the person providing the mentorship, but certainly you can set up enough structure in place to disseminate mentoring in other places. And this connects to something that Mr. Pennington touched on earlier. The standardized program evaluation protocol is based on exactly this type of premise, that there are certain generic approaches, if you will. They're not evidence-based, they're not name-brand programs, but they're ways of interacting with kids. They're types of services that can be provided that have a tremendous amount of research behind them that we can carry that out and replicate it in other places when it's effective.
So if I understand you correctly, we may not, to the naked eye, be able to understand why this works here. But your framework can take certain ingredients out of it that are common and can at least structure it in a way that has a fighting chance to be successful somewhere else.
Absolutely. That's actually the foundation of the SPEP, the Standardized Program Evaluation Protocol. And that's being piloted in 11 counties in Pennsylvania right now.
William Cobb, thank you for your testimony today.
You're welcome. Thanks
So
for having me.
I apologize for publicly snickering with the moment that you indicated that evidence-based is now a term that is very popular among anyone who is competing for funding to implement any such program. So I wanted to get that out of the way. But then also say that I guess in what you just indicated is that even if a program hasn't been researched and hasn't been deemed evidence-based, it still has the potential to produce the outcomes that we want.
Correct.
Okay. And then my next question would be, since evidence-based is popular, we all know that investing in a person going to school, an after-school program, mentoring, we know that these things are far better suited to produce outcomes that we want in a society rather than locking someone up and throwing away the key and throwing them in solitary confinement and then putting restrictions upon them because they living with their scarlet letter. So we know this. But just in your terminology, could you name at least 3 methods, evidence-based methods, that we could readily look to implementing in order to deal with the current, what can we actually do that will have an impact, whether it's evidence-based or not, or based off of evidence-based findings that we can do, whether it be mentoring, whether it be after-school programs, if you have anything like that.
Sure. There are a number of fundamentals of what works in prevention, and I can share a few of those with you, and I actually have some handouts if the council members are interested around more of the sort of core tenets of effective programming. At their core, most effective is using a strengths-based approach, which is to not necessarily focus kids on don't do this, don't do that, don't do this other thing, don't get involved in this, but instead have them focus on the things that you do want them to be doing. And that helps developmentally to focus on where I should be going, not on all of the closed doors. Point youth to the open door that you want them to be going through. So in any evidence-based program that has all of this great research behind it and effective approaches otherwise, they're often based on this strength-based approach. So that is one, and I would say that's a fundamental. All youth fare better when they have good skills for coping with anxiety, with anger, good skills for negotiating peer pressure, for refusing peer pressure but keeping their friends. So it's a core component of a family-based program that is supported by PCCD that we provide technical assistance for, is that kids need the ability to resist the pressure, but without disenfranchising or breaking down their friendships, because friendships are extremely important to young people, and they become increasingly important over time. So helping kids develop these very practical skills that are, again, strengths-based. They're focused towards what you want them to be doing and pro-social development. I would say that I think the last one, which you've hit on a couple of times, is around mentoring, and we've talked about that quite a bit, that as long as youth have one very positive, truly nurturing relationship with a caring adult, they're going to fare better in the world and have better long-term outcomes than kids who don't have at least that one relationship. It doesn't have to be a parent, but it needs to be somebody who can help them focus and stay on target. Sure.
Thank you. I'm assuming that there have been like aha moments when it comes to research that helps you foretell or spot trends. I'm interested in knowing. I'm asking you to provide an example where you've seen something, where you've seen a trend going the wrong way, like we don't want to go down this road, based on your research.
Without naming names.
That's not fair.
You can talk about types of, I don't want to.
Yeah, I get you. I'll tell you what, there seems to be a constant trend of a gravitational pull towards certain types of approaches that summarily do not work. And I think the pull is because there's a felt need to do something. There's an interest in having sort of a grassroots collective community effort to help kids to intervene on a crisis. The problem is that while these approaches are well-meaning, they don't have evidence of being effective, and in many cases have demonstrated research over and over again that certain types of approaches can actually increase risk and cause youth to become more delinquent than they were before they participated in the program. Typically, this involves scare tactics. So this is the opposite of what I was describing before. Okay, so scare tactics is, these are all the things we don't want you to do. You don't want to wind up in jail. You don't want to use drugs. You don't da-da-da-da-da. And what happens is you're exposing kids to things that maybe are novel to them, that are exciting to them. This doesn't work with their brain development. Youth are that the sort of reasoned, logical, tempering part of the brain has not fully developed yet until the early 20s. So what you wind up doing is exposing youth to very novel sort of sensation, risk-seeking type scenarios and potentially piquing their interest in it as opposed to sort of diverting them away from it. So we see this a lot. We are fighting it a lot. And I would say that's the sort of the constant trend. And it's tough because it feels like the right thing to do with an adult brain, but it's not actually the right thing to do.
So that's just what we would call the scared straight method.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, scared straight has, the data and the research has shown that it doesn't work. It's not effective.
Correct.
But my question is that I don't think that we can arbitrarily either implement programs or conversely eliminate programs because they are on the list of what works and what doesn't work. My question is, for example, at the prison system, we had a program where we brought the kids in to see what corrections officials and other people that work in the prison system do. It was more of a shadowing situation for more careers in corrections, as opposed to scaring them into not engaging in any kind of negative behavior. But my question would be, and I appreciate your testimony, since you're well-versed in the subject, is the implementation of a program that has been shown to work. research is all you do is present the facts. You don't actually go through the implementation. And a lot of time, it's not the actual theory, but it's the implementator of the program.
Yes.
What do you, in your work, what have you seen to work where you take the theory and the research and match it to the implementation?
Sure. This is exactly what the Epicenter is funded to do, is to work with community providers from the very beginning of adopting an evidence-based program. So we coordinate with program developers to make sure that we have timely and qualified training within the state of Pennsylvania, so that if a community is interested in implementing life skills training, they have access to a life skills training certified trainer. We ensure that on the ground, that the community, the agency that's implementing that program is implementing with what is known as fidelity. This is probably a term that some of you have heard, which is to say that the program is reasonably being delivered according to how it was also actually researched. So the program on the ground is not looking significantly different from how it was in the lab, essentially. We build data collection and evaluation tools that communities use. They're required to use it when they're funded by PCCD. Very simple Excel-based tools that calculate a lot of formulas behind the scenes and enable those implementers to look at what level of fidelity are we delivering with, what level of dosage are we getting enough of this program to these kids and families. And they also report short-term outcomes. So did attitudes towards ATOD, alcohol, tobacco, other drugs reduced? Did problem-solving skills improve? Those types of things. Lastly, we also work with communities to develop strategies for sustaining that program once the seed funding has ended. And so we're there from start to finish with that free technical assistance and training. We have a whole website that has a tremendous set of resources around implementing the program, evaluating it, sustaining it, as well as what we call readiness tools, which are just usually like a 4-page document or so that if you're interested in that program but you're not entirely sure if it's the right fit, you can look through this document, get a better sense of, is this the right fit of our community needs with this program? And it outlines the things that you kind of need to have in place to realistically get that program up and running. So we do a lot from start to finish to support that.
Would you have a figure on the amount of resources and taxpayers' money that these evidence-based programs have saved the taxpayers?
Yes. This is what Mr. Pennington was describing earlier around the cost-benefit estimates that we've been developing. So we take the PCCD grants that are awarded to these programs. We look at the cost per youth or per family, depending on the program. So we take the Pennsylvania costs combined with the Washington State Institute of Public Policy benefits, and we calculate net benefits, basically, per person per youth. So in the last our last analysis of this, we looked at 3 fiscal years, and the return was over $38 million.
Back to the taxpayers?
Correct.
Great.
I have just one more question.
Right, so we're gonna jump around so that everybody gets.
I just wanted to find out, for the Pennsylvania Youth Survey that you mentioned, does that become almost a prerequisite for looking at some of the programs and I guess doing a needs assessment in the community to see what you might suggest or adapt or?
It's a required for the CTC process. The violence prevention program funding requires a risk and needs assessment to be done in the last 3 years. It's not required to use the PACE, I don't think, for that one. And I think the substance abuse and education demand reduction, I don't know if that requires either of those. I'm not certain about that. But the PACE is a tremendous resource for gathering risk and protective factor data, and it's huge for prevention planning.
Did you have another?
That answers my question.
Okay. So, did you give testimony yet? Would you like to? There you go.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of City Council, and this esteemed panel. My name is Shakima Fulmore Townsend, and I'm the President and CEO of the Philadelphia Youth Network. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss the importance of creating opportunity for our city's youth that not only provide productive experiences during the summer months and outside of school, but also help prepare them to become skilled, educated, and engaged citizens in our future workforce. The Philadelphia Youth Network, PYN, is an intermediary organization dedicated to connecting systems and leveraging resources. PYN works to equip young people for academic achievement, economic opportunity, and personal success. To achieve this mission, we coordinate and support large-scale cross-sector initiatives while developing targeted programs to expand access to service for underserved youth. At PYN, we know that when potential meets opportunity, youth will succeed. We believe in the power of partnership and the need for collaboration. We have seen firsthand the scale we can accomplish when we work together. And we are committed to continuing this work until all Philadelphia's young people take their rightful place as full contributing members of a world-class workforce for the region. Since our founding in 1999, PYN has coordinated nearly $500 million in public and private funds to serve more than 150,000 young people, including $145 million in federal funding leveraged to secure an additional $340 million in local and private funds, and has contracted with over 200 organizations to deliver evidence-based youth programs. Specifically, PYN creates and scales effective service pathways that lead to greater education and employment outcomes for vulnerable youth. PYN serves as the managing partner for two of the city's most comprehensive campaigns focused on improving the educational and economic outcomes of the Philadelphia's young people. Project U-Turn, designed to improve the high school graduation rates of the city's youth, and Work Ready Philadelphia, dedicated to creating systemic approaches to address the skills gap for vulnerable youth. PYN works to advance these campaigns and improve outcomes for Philadelphia's youth by guiding vision and strategy, supporting aligned activities, establishing shared metrics, building public will, mobilizing funding, and advancing policy. Work Ready Philadelphia, as a citywide initiative, is dedicated to improving the economic outcomes of the region's youth by attracting, aligning, and investing resources in a coordinated youth workforce development strategies. The Work Ready Philadelphia campaign is a collaboration of partners, including employers, schools, community-based organizations, advocacy groups, labor unions, and private investors. Programs under the Work Ready campaign provide career exposure and workforce preparation opportunities to thousands of young people annually. Intended to enhance youth understanding and mastery of skills needed to be successful in a 21st century economy, these programs also provide academic enrichment and promote awareness of post-secondary options. Work Ready Philadelphia operates year-round and summer programming for youth and young adults between the ages of 12 and 24. Each program is designed to challenge youth to understand the correlation between work experience, skill attainment, and high school completion, and how these variables impact their potential for college and career success. Work Ready summer program models are a set of programs that provide a continuum of research-based and developmentally appropriate programs. There are currently 4 summer program models that serve youth ages 12 to 21 without post-secondary experience. The first of those models is the Career Exposure Model, provides opportunities for rising 8th grader youth to explore skills and experiences that careers require and to be introduced to key 21st century skills, specifically focused on introducing long-term and short-term goal setting and providing opportunities to build their social networks. Career exposure is the only non-wage bearing model. However, youth participants receive financial incentives, which are not connected to hours of participation. Service learning programs employ teaching and learning strategies designed for youth with an interest in civic service and little or no prior exposure to the world of work. These programs allow youth to collectively address real-world issues, problems, and needs within the local, regional, national, or global community. Our Work Experience Model program provides a structured work experience for youth with limited exposure to the world of work. These programs provide youth with explicit opportunities to further explore a desired career path as well as practice 21st century skills. And the last of the 4 models, internships, offers an advanced opportunity for youth with prior employment and/or leadership experience. These experiences provide youth with exposure to professional careers otherwise not accessible to the teenage population, opportunities to develop and refine targeted 21st century skills, and engagement in ongoing professional development workshops. In addition, internships provide opportunities for youth to work closely with a trained adult supervisor who serves in an instructional role throughout the duration of the experiences. Last year, PYN contracted with nearly 70 community-based organizations throughout the city to operate one or more of the Work Ready Summer Program models. Over 1,000 work sites hosted youth throughout Philadelphia. With support from Work Ready, our city achieved our goal of providing 10,000 summer work experiences. Nearly 90%, 8,812 of those experiences were provided through Work Ready. Of the thousands of youth served in summer 2015 through Work Ready, just over half were female. Nearly 70% were high school age between 15 and 17 years old, and nearly 90% were youth of color, 76% African American, 12% Hispanic. Why do summer jobs matter? Our city and our partners collaborate and invest at impressive scale every year to create summer work experiences for young people because we understand just how important these experiences can be. They provide economic opportunity. Last year, Work Ready participants earned more than $6 million, which was infused back into the local economy. They provide career awareness. Summer work opportunities help youth gain exposure and experience in our local workforce and growing industries. They provide academic achievement. Work Ready summer models implement project-based learning, and successful participants are eligible to receive an elective credit through the School District of Philadelphia. They provide professional and adult connections. Summer experiences provide youth with a network of caring adults and helps build the first stages of professional and career connections. However, at PYN, we understand that programming interventions and supports for youth provide critical avenues of support beyond skill building and workforce preparation. They help to combat poverty and trauma. Nearly all Work Ready participants will self-identify as having household incomes at or below 235% of the poverty line. Research has shown that trauma from extreme poverty and violence has serious impact on child development. Seth Pollack from the University of Madison, Wisconsin, and his colleagues have shown that the human child can learn to accommodate quite a wide variety of circumstances, but that extreme poverty and violence are out of the range of the child's developed capabilities for coping. The effect is a dangerous cycle. Living in poverty makes our youth significantly more likely to experience trauma, and the psychological effects of trauma make it harder to overcome the challenges associated with poverty. The critical component to reversing trauma and stress from the type of exposure is connection to caring adults. Harvard University's Center on the Developing Child has shown that without caring adults, the unrelenting stress of extreme poverty and other high-stress barriers can actually weaken the architecture of the developing brain, with long-term consequences for learning, behavior, and both physical and mental health. It's also worth noting, research from America's Promise Alliance found that supportive relationships with adults in and out of school can reduce the likeliness of leaving school early by as much as 25%. With these realities, we understand how imperative it is that young people not only learn the importance of 21st century skills and work experiences, but also the importance of building a network of support. I'm happy to report that in 2015, 94%, over 9 out of 10 young people who participated in Work Ready summer programs reported having a supportive mentor in their workplace, that their work was valued by adults in the program, and that adults in the program were invested in their success. Preventing incarceration and mortality. In 2015 and this year in 2016, PYN has partnered with Dr. Sarah Heller, a researcher from the University of Pennsylvania, to better understand the larger impact of Work Ready summer programs. Dr. Heller's similar research in Chicago has shown that summer jobs may be a critical component to preventing crime and violence among disadvantaged youth.
You think?
We're good?
That's one of those aha moments.
Great. There is no lack of need to understand that severity and importance of these issues. The level of incarceration in the United States has reached unprecedented levels, disproportionately affecting minorities and youth. Data tells us that 1 in 3 black men will spend time in prison in their lives, compared to only 1 in 17 white men. The problem is not only offending, but also victimization. Homicide kills more young African American males than the 9 other leading causes of death combined. It is critical to note that early incarceration reduces education attainment and employment, as well as increases the likelihood of future incarceration. Research revealed that 6 to 8 week summer job programs in New York and Chicago had considerable impact on violent offending, mortality, largely from homicide, and future incarceration. In Chicago, violent crime arrests dropped by 43% over 16 months. In New York, mortality declined by 20% over 5 to 7 years. Importantly, the declines occur largely after the program ends, meaning that the effects are not merely a mechanical effect of keeping youth busy during the summer. The research is also showing a change in youth's behavior post-summer. In 2015, PYN partnered with Dr. Heller in a randomized controlled treatment study with 201 youth. And in 2016, we plan to expand the study to include minimally 300 young people. This work will not only contribute to the existing research, but will also help our city better understand the impact our work is having locally, especially for vulnerable populations. Our priorities for moving forward. It is clear that providing summer experiences for young people helps prepare them for academic and career success, builds their network of support, and helps them stay safe. However, of the 16,000 young people who applied to have a work-ready summer experience last year, nearly 9,000 were placed, but over 7,000 were not, due to a lack of funded opportunities available. Mayor Kinney spoke last month at a press conference about the importance of summer and early work experiences. Our city and our partners play a critical role in making these experiences a reality for young people. And there are several key priorities worth highlighting to ensure continued scale and fidelity of summer programming. Investment. Every year, we start from zero, and every year we work to secure funding that will create as many opportunities as possible for young people. A key strategy to increasing the annual number of opportunities will be establishing early and multi-year commitments that create a higher starting point for secured opportunities. We achieve scale through investments from public and private support. Mayor Kinney has championed the importance of this work, and just last month joined PYN and the DNC Hosting Committee to announce an investment of $150,000 from JP Morgan Chase in partnership through the Hosting Committee to support summer experiences this year via Work Ready. Last year, the City of Philadelphia invested $7 million to support summer experiences through Work Ready, including investments from the Department of Human Services, Philadelphia Parks and Recreation. This year, already committed investments from DHS and Parks and Recs total more than $6 million. At this time, we currently project enough secured funding to support 6,000 experiences through Work Ready this summer. There is approximately $7.2 million in investment needed to close the gap to achieve 10,000. A Work Ready summer experience costs just $1,800 to support a young person. We need employers of all sectors and size across the city to hire and host young people. But we also know it takes large investments from the private and particularly the public sector to truly attain the scale we aspire to achieve. In research, as I mentioned earlier, another critical priority to truly understand the impact of our work is through research. This year, PYN plans to partner with Dr. Heller and the University of Pennsylvania to expand the research pilot to include minimally 300 youth this summer. Additionally, PYN is preparing to release a new RFP this year for contracts beginning in 2017, and we have incorporated the research methodology in order to continue scaling the study and build upon our data. Funding and supporting this research is a task PYN is committed to because it will help define the short-term and long-term impact that summer work experience has for our city's youth, and it will inform our practices and implementation to ensure we are equitably serving our vulnerable populations. This work requires partnership, dedication, and investment to make opportunities possible. But as you can see, members of the committee, the impact is significant for the youth we serve and for our city and region's future workforce. Thank you, committee chairman and council members and esteemed members of the panel, for your interest and leadership in this area. I look forward to working with the council to ensure that all our young people have access to enriching developmental opportunities that they need and that they deserve. I would be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Other than you and Morgan, we've gotten over that. We've been good.
I appreciate that.
For at least as many as 10, 15 years, we've had a relationship with PYN and provided young people a summer experience with having a job and exposing them to Washington, D.C., Harrisburg. Representative Harris is here, and we took them up there. He actually sat in your desk, unbeknownst to you. So we've had that experience. A couple questions. One, I know there's a gap. 50% of the need is met every year, but those other 50%, what happens to them?
Well, unfortunately, the other 50% are not eligible or not able to participate in actual work experiences. One thing to note for the committee, our experience in its entirety is designed to be developmentally appropriate and instructive. So every young person, one, has to apply online, like this mimics real-world job application process. Every young person has to be able to develop those communication skills and show the responsiveness that builds self-direction and initiative. But those young people are not able to connect to any of the actual employment experiences.
So do you follow what happens to them in your measurements?
We currently do not have the funding to do effective follow-up with young people who are not able to experience the work intervention.
That might be an interesting statistic to follow. Not that it would be pleasant, but we might want to follow that. The second thing is, can you define for this panel what you call opportunity youth?
What opportunity youth? So nationally, the definition of opportunity youth is young people who are between the ages of 16 to 24 and are out of school and out of work.
And it's a nice way to put it, but is the other term at risk often?
I think people interchangeably use those because opportunity youth could be also at risk. I think one of the things that's important for this committee to know in terms of national dialogue, the term opportunity youth really came out of the White House Community Solutions Task Force, in which they actually surveyed young people, and they did not want to be called dropouts or at-risk young people. So this was a way of adults sort of showing that they heard what young people wanted and to recognize the asset-based approach that Dr. Stephanie mentioned earlier. And so opportunity youth may be at risk as well. It was just a response that the young people don't want to be identified by their deficit. They want to be identified by their potential.
I'm not going to understand, we're in an age of sensitivity. We have to be politically correct about what we call one another. However, and nevertheless, statistics do not, well, they can lie, but they often tell a tale. And at risk is 17 to 24, where if in so many different categories, you're going to make it or break it right there. And those experiences that we either give them or don't tell the tale. And so my question becomes, do you have a year-round program?
Yes, we have several. So we operate first 4 E3 centers that offer year-round programming to opportunity youth, specifically at-risk youth, and they also offer reconnection services to young people who are exposed to the juvenile justice system. That partnership has been a 10-year partnership. They serve about 1,000 young people a year.
So one of the things for this committee to note is that there is such a thing, but not to capacity of what we would need. Compare what you actually do to what the need is, just like you did with the summer youth. You said there were 12,000 people who wanted a job. 7,000 or 8,000 of them got one. What is this pool of folk that are opportunity youth?
There's 46,000 young people who are between the ages of 16 and 24 and out of school and out of work in the city of Philadelphia. And I just told you about one intervention that serves about 1,000 of them. Under Project U-Turn, there's also a set of accelerated academic options that have about 3,200 seat capacity. I think it's also important for the committee to understand that a lot of these programs have what we will call revolving entry, or they function as dropout centers. So the capacity of the center is really critical, because if you have young people sort of stay in the seat longer than intended or come in and out, it's harder sometimes to show sort of the return on investment and the efficacy, because it really is about the availability of the intervention and being ready when life has opened up a window for young people to participate, and their participation is not sequential. So oftentimes we look at cost per slot, cost per use, or cost over time, and I think it's important for the committee to understand that the 12-month participation might actually take this kind of young person 18 to 24 months because of the way they are facing life circumstances. So their participation is not synchronous. And I think oftentimes when we look at data, evaluation, and metrics, we forget that the participation just looks different.
So my final question, in one of my schools, which will go nameless, every Monday we do a 7 a.m. roll call with all of the principals in the neighborhood. We talk about the week before and what potential problems we can foresee, that this school had an issue with that school and they're coming up after school to take out whatever. And we arrange buses, we arrange interventions, we get the police out there, you might get a early dismissal, you may get a later dismissal, just so that you don't hit each other. But what we found were, and what I would present to you, that out of 600 people at this particular school, there was only 20 of them that were the bad actors, that were causing 90% of the drama. And if we could, and I don't want to reward bad behavior, but I do want to give people who need extra attention some of that. And do you go after that particular element?
Absolutely. So we talked a lot about what works, but one of the things that I wanted to add to that conversation was it's what works for whom. And what you are describing is that some programs or some level of intensity is needed for a specific population, and that doesn't mean that others don't need service. So we are very intentional about establishing partners that prioritize what we describe as high priority populations: young people who are parenting, young people who are connected to the juvenile justice system, young people who are connected to foster care. And I have to those are some of the top groups that we're talking about, and I have to acknowledge the long-standing partnership. As I mentioned, we've been in relationship with the Department of Human Services for over 10 years. And the other thing that I didn't talk about is we also have 9 other programs that operate year-round, and they are connected to schools who have underperforming around their graduation rates. It's for 11th and 12th graders, and those programs help young people to create that big bridge towards the high school diploma. Serves approximately 325 young people. It's not at scale, if you will. So I think we have a lot of challenges when we have a small pot of money and such a great need, and we're targeting to those schools that are most needy.
So President Clark has instructed this panel to identify those underserved programs that if we could match peanut butter to jelly over here, you got PCCD sitting right next to you, and the bigger committee does about 83 million grants every year to an underserved population that needs to come to scale. The purpose of this is to try to make those kinds of connections. So, thank you. We'll start this way this time.
William Cobb again. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
So, my question is, why the effort in researching what anyone knows, academia, a kid, that if you invest in this particular thing, you get this outcome? So is the reason for investing in the research so that you could compel a better argument to solicit more funding? Do we literally have to spend money on finding out that employing young people prevents them from getting in trouble in order to get more money?
That is such a remarkable question. I just want to thank you for pointing out that tension. So I should have mentioned this, but Dr. Heller actually has not received any money from us in order to do the research. I think there is a need to be able to present yourself as having evidence-based strategies in order to compete in national arenas for funding. So yes, there is part of what we're doing is defining the Philadelphia-specific advantages in competition with other cities who are doing the same type of work. But it's important to note that engaging in this research has actually not cost our system any opportunities to young people.
I'll kick in it because your program says you're stopping poverty and trauma and incarceration and mortality. So the question is, for research, is that happening? I mean, are you targeting, like, if I go up here in North Philly, in my most impoverished neighborhood in the city of Philadelphia, how many kids, can your graph tell me how many kids are being employed in that area?
Yes, so we have a map that I don't have all of the zip codes here, but I'm happy to make the map of services available to the committee.
Okay, because I think that's where the key is are we, and the same thing with PCCD and Doc, as you described, when you look at the data, I mean, there's a great article today about zip codes, right? And if you live in a certain zip code, you have life expectancy is, 20 years less than someone who lives in a higher, and we kind of know what they're saying it a different way. Right. Do we ever strategically look at those pockets and say, instead of waiting for someone to come, that we're going to go there? That we're going to go to 191 zip code and go here because we can identify already that it's a challenging neighborhood or pocket. It's open to all of you.
Well, I'll answer first. One of the things that we intentionally do is operate a citywide approach. And I think that with that comes its blessing and it comes its challenges. Right. And one of the things we were able to do was track our data and overlay not just zip codes, but KUA regions, recreation centers, career links, and really look at the distribution of services over poverty levels in communities. So not
just employment?
And that's for our employment programs. And then we brought all of our partners together because, again, we can't do this alone. And so we were very intentional about what does our service footprint look like and what do we want it to be. And we're making some intentional investment decisions based on those statistics, namely the poverty level and crime rates.
Living in Norris Square, the 19122 district, the zip code, I've benefited from having a few youth work and still have relationships with them. It does take a toll on a small organization, though, because you do have to, if you care and you do it right, you have to invest yourself. So that was a challenge. I can no longer do it because I don't want to do it halfway. But there is an organization, the Norris Square Neighborhood Project, that hires multiple youth, and I've seen them change because we work with the same youth. So I applaud the work you're doing, and we got to close that gap somehow.
Thank you, Ryan.
Just wanted to add a couple of pieces related to mapping and reaching out for higher risk areas. At the Epicenter, we do have a map of all of the previously funded PCCD grants and the different programs that have run in each county. I don't think we don't have it at the zip code level. I think that is tracked in PCCD's system. Part of what I think there's a more of a movement towards understand all of the programming that's being funded across the different state agencies to get a better sense of where there's saturation and where there's not.
Yeah, one of our critical priorities moving forward, as I mentioned in my testimony, of trying to develop a comprehensive strategy around the Commonwealth, because there's different agencies that offer different funding. So we kind of want to get everybody together to look at, okay, what are you funding? What are we funding? Is it, so that we can have a coordinated strategy, and then we'll better serve communities and better use resources out to communities.
I'm going to take the prerogative of the chair to help your son get his father to that baseball game and say to you that what this says to me and speaks to me is we need to have a subcommittee with just them. And to really dive deeper into some of the potential. I love your mapping. I love your quantitative analysis, and I love your money. So, I mean, I love you all. You're all cute. So what we'd like to do is get you guys together and maybe kind of dig down on how we can do a couple of good things. One, bring good programs that we measure to scale, to invest it, and for those that have the jury is still out for, get them analyzed. You know what I mean? To see what, so just because your program does not have a label, does not fit directly in a box that we know of, we will try to evaluate it to take what is replicable to other places. We will take good programs that exist and bring them to scale. And then to geographically, if I heard everybody say what exists, I really like that approach of being able to see what our social footprint is, so that where we have data-driven neighborhoods that require almost an acute treatment, we can apply that and say what that treatment should be. So I don't know how we create a subcommittee to look at this and what we should call it.
Can we motion a subcommittee today or the larger group?
Well, I think it's in prevention, so I think we already have it.
So we have it in prevention. See, we had to find your box. So you're in prevention. And one of the things that we really want to do is try to stop the bleeding. So we have two goals. Immediately stop the bleeding coming this summer, and to long-term kind of create models of success that we can replicate. So we know all where you are. We're going to reach out to you to tap that wealth of information. And thank you so much for your testimony.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't follow up on something Councilman Jones said, because there's an old saying that it's not what people say or how long they take to say it, but it's how it makes people feel. And I'm a product of your program. We had Lincoln High School. 98% of those kids are either in college or working in corrections. And the problem that we found is that we got to get more people that are stakeholders in Philadelphia, small business community, large business communities, to cooperate. I gave them my time, and we need a point person at every city department and agency that's willing to supervise those children. It's not just supervision, it's also counseling. And I'm proud to say that I got these kids still call me, and they went through your program, and I really appreciate what you do. And I agree with Councilman Jones. We have to get you guys together, because that's a miniature program, what CETA used to do, that I went through. And you guys are doing it.
You're going back now.
Oh, yeah.
Did you say CETA?
Ms. Townsend, is the program still open? Can companies that still want to hire a child can still apply, or still?
Absolutely.
All right, so you're on the
I'm on
camera.
TV,
Let's
so
give me that quick infomercial, very short about.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The quick version here is that $1,800 really does change the life of a young person, and we will accept donations. You can hire a young person. You can host a young person in your business by contacting phillysummerjobs.org.
Say it one more time.
phillysummerjobs.org.
All right, so the listening public, as you're sitting in your place and you're looking to support a young person during the summer, I mean, this is a great opportunity for you to give something back to the community. So thank you.
If it pleases the group, we have Representative Harris here as well. I don't want to get his comments. He's on the Justice Committee, I believe it is, with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So we may be reaching out to him on some statutory changes. So let's let him have his say, please. Thank you all for your testimony, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's my prerogative. Representative Head, this is not your first time testifying, but welcome, and state your name for the record and give us your thoughts and insights on this thing called criminal justice.
Sure. Jordan Harris, State Representative for the 186th Legislative District, covering parts of South and Southwest Philadelphia. To the Chair, thank you so much for the invitation, and to all of my dear friends here today. Since being elected to the legislature in 2013, one of the things that I've tried to focus on outside of education was criminal justice reform. Currently, the Department of Correction spends about $2.1 billion to house more than 50,000 inmates in our criminal justice system. The Department of Correction is merging with the Department of Probation and Parole, and together that budget then balloons to $2.6 billion, which is roughly 8% of our total general fund budget. And for me, seeing so many folks locked up for extended period of time, but then coming home and having so many collateral consequences and so many barriers to reintegrating into society, I knew that if we were going to make streets safer, if we were going to be smart on crime, it had to start with what did we do with our sons and our daughters when they came home, either from being incarcerated and or some who never went away to any time of incarceration, but who now had some type of criminal record. So we were happy that this past February, Governor Wolf signed into law Senate Bill 166, which is now Act Number 5 of 2016, working with Democrats and Republicans, both in the House and the Senate. We were able to move legislation that deals with misdemeanor 2s and misdemeanor 3s that are of a nonviolent nature. After 10 years' time, a person will be able to go to court and have that record sealed. That was signed into law on February 16th. It actually takes effect on November 14th of this year. In addition to that, just last week, myself and Representative Cheryl Delosier in the House, as well as Senator Scott Wagner and Senator Anthony Williams in the Senate, held a press conference to introduce what we're calling clean slate legislation in the House. That will be House Bill 1984. This bill says that a person convicted of any misdemeanor, 1, 2, or 3, as long as it doesn't have anything to do with children, as long as it doesn't have anything to do with being registered on the sex offender registry, that person after 10 years would automatically receive a clean slate, and their record would be sealed with regards to becoming gainfully employed. What we understand is that all of the programs in the world will not erase a criminal record. And the fact remains that if a person cannot be gainfully employed, statistics show us that many of them will and have recidivated and go back into our criminal justice system. So we have to fix the scarlet letter that is affixed on many of our sons and our daughters when they come home from being incarcerated. The issue is so big that when you look at it from a dollars and cents perspective, if we were able to reduce the Department of Corrections budget by just a third, we would be able to send 33,000 young people to college for free at one of our 14 state system universities. 33,000. There are only 93,000 young people at all of those universities. Reduce the Department of Correction by a third, you can afford to pay for a third of the young people in our state system schools right now and send them to school for free. So when we look at a time in Harrisburg where our budget is slim and we don't have money to go around, instead of cutting education, my thought is how do we reform our justice system so that we can spend less to send our folks to be incarcerated. It's not necessarily the easiest thing, but I am encouraged, and the reason why I'm here today is because I'm encouraged that there should be, I don't know if it's another subcommittee or whatnot, but there has to be a partnership between local, state, and federal government on how we address this together. And I know people are oftentimes skeptical of Harrisburg when trying to get anything done. I get it.
Sorry, that was an emotional.
No, I get it. But the reality is this. I believe that out of all of the things that we have been working on in Harrisburg, there is bipartisan support for moving bills that deal with criminal justice reform. I think we're at a place where people understand that we are spending too much money incarcerating folks and that we could have a better use of those dollars. So I am interested, I would suggest, I would implore that we look at how we deal with this on not just the city, and I'm very glad to my dear friend for the $3.5 million grant that is coming to the city of Philadelphia, and congratulations on your work on that effort. But this, if we're really going to address this, it has to be on all levels of government. For example, look at collateral consequences of what happens. Currently, right now, there are municipalities in Pennsylvania that have laws on the books that says you, by law, cannot rent to a person who has a drug conviction in the last 7 years. That is a law on the books in certain places in Pennsylvania. Additionally, by law, by statute actually, right now, with certain drug convictions, you can't get certain government grants to go to college. By statute, by regulation, right now, certain folks with certain records can't live in public housing. So how is it that you send a person home? In many places in Pennsylvania, they can't rent a facility because of their record. They can't go to school to better themselves because they can't afford it, and we won't give them the government money to do so like we do everyone else. They can't come home to live with their mother. They can't come home to even live with the mother of their children because they live in public housing. So when we talk about all of the collateral consequences that affect those who are formerly incarcerated or formerly convicted persons, we have to address it not just from a city level, not just from a state level, but even on a federal level. There are issues that we all have to come to the table together to address. If we do not, something or someone is going to continue to fall through the cracks, and we will continue to see ourselves spinning in a cycle that does nothing but send folks back to prison and stop them from becoming gainfully employed and reintegrating into our society. So I implore you for all the work that you're doing, but I want you to know that you have partners in Harrisburg who are willing to work on these issues together so that we can finally reverse some of the, I don't know if they're unintended, so I think some of them were intended, but I will give folks the benefit of the doubt and say some of the unintended consequences of certain pieces of legislation that has passed on a federal and on a state level that does nothing but balloons the number of people in our system and then really does nothing to rehabilitate them and help them when they come home. So you have a partner in the state. Our Secretary of Corrections, John Wetzel, I think, and I will say this publicly, is probably by far one of the best Secretaries of Corrections we have ever had in the Commonwealth. He gets it, he understands, and if we all can work together, I really believe that we can make a positive impact in the lives of the folks who have found themselves on the wrong side of the law, but have changed and reformed their lives. And they don't want to hand out, they just want to hand into the system. Thank you.
So it would be inappropriate for the chair to stand up and start clapping at this point, but I just want you to know, inside I am clapping. Thank you for what you've done in Harrisburg and finding a way to be not a red state or a blue state in philosophy, but come to a state of mind to move things. And people say nothing gets done in Harrisburg, but you're proof positive that it did. The second thing is I'd like to take you up on a state and federal subcommittee, if you would, because you're right, there are certain statutes that we might want, or we can't touch a crime code here, so it would be in our interest, Judge Lerner, to kind of figure out who we can work with at the state and federal levels. Also, I'd like, if you have opinion about this, or if you want to do some research on this, I'll take either one. It's been my observation, the federal ex-offender release program back into society is very different than the state and the city. And I'm not going to say whose is better. I ain't calling anybody out, but I'll just say the federal government, there's a 2-year commitment to these individuals where they provide housing, they provide family unification, they provide, and they are very strict about what your hourly rate can be, because they have an index that says, here's how much you need to be able to make in order to provide a living so that you don't go back to it is very different in structure, and I just think it is probably one of the better ones, that we need to have somebody at each of these levels to see what common denominators we can put in place. I don't know.
Well, what I would say to that, Councilman, is I think that's why the collaboration is important. I think sometimes in our legislative bodies, we work kind of in silos. And, you know, I don't contend to think I know what goes on in City Council. You know, I have a great relationship with the two council people that my district overlaps, Councilman Johnson and Councilman Blackwell, and we talk about the issues. But I don't contend to know everything that goes on in City Council, and I don't contend to know everything that goes on in Congress. But what I do know is that there are experts on each level, and we should be talking more. And we should be talking more with a designed agenda on how at each level we can address these issues. For example, I know that at Greatest-Fort, a place that I visit Greatest-Fort probably once every 2 or 3 months, there's a great program called the FACTS program. Don't ask me what the letters stand for, but it's basically a program where you have fathers who are incarcerated, and they go through several weeks of training, and at the completion of their training, they are reunited with their children. The mom and the child comes up to the prison. The child and the father are able to interact. The child is able to tell the father how they feel about them not being there, about whatever those issues are. And the purpose of the program is so that when the father is released, it's not like this is your father who has been absent for the last 5 to 10 years, but it's your father is home and your father has been involved and engaged. And one of the things that they've asked for is a partnership with the school district, because the fathers want to Skype for parent-teacher conferences.
We just mentioned,
because they want to be involved in a child's life. They want to, find out, what's going on in the classroom and see how they can be helpful. So, how do we use things like that to continue to help, find out what's the city doing, what's the feds doing, and what can we do collectively? Because I believe that you're going to come up with some things that you think will help that the city can't do. That's going to have to happen on the state level. And then there's going to be things that the federal government need to do. So
we've decided we're deputizing you to be our rep at the state. But one thing in specific that I think is a good homework assignment, there is a lot of pending decision at the Supreme Court level about juvenile offenders that were committed. I think it might be 300 of them that are coming right back here that have been incarcerated, some of them at a tender age of 17, 18, been in jail for 40 years.
Longest is 63 years.
63 years, and are coming home. This is well before the internet. This is their adjustment to coming back after believing that they never would come back home is becoming a potential reality. What I'd like to know is, what are we doing and put in place for that reentry? And if you could champion finding that out and providing that to this committee.
We can We can speak to that as well. Speaking on
Say your name for the record, though.
Oh, Julie Wertheimer, Chief of Staff to the Deputy Managing Director for Criminal Justice. On the topic of multi-level collaboration, we actually just began conversations with Secretary Wetzel, who the representative is absolutely right. He's been a wonderful advocate on these issues. And so while the plans are not set in stone yet, there has been movement and a great amount of leadership from the state on trying to address this issue. They're keenly aware of the opportunity and challenge Philadelphia will face when these individuals return to their communities. And we welcome the opportunity to continue this conversation and figure out how we can all work together to address this.
So may I take an action, body? All those in favor of deputizing Representative Harris to be our liaison signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the ayes have it. You heard it. So that's no pay, just more work.
More work. I'm with you.
So I just really think that you raised an important point, that if we're talking about legislation here, we get superseded by you get superseded by the federal laws, and we should really be thinking about how we can codify what we do in a way. So I'd like really to draw upon your expertise at that.
No, I think it's important. I mean, even the judge, I think one of the things that we lack is sometimes input from the judiciary on some of the folks that they continue to see coming back in front of them and whatnot. So, I think this is and the people that we're talking about, the ex-offender population. I really believe that this is a all hands on deck type of thing, where we need to be able to sit at the table, all of us, and say, these are the barriers that happen when you come home. These are the barriers that we see in the law. These are the barriers that you see from the bench. And then come up with some tangible things, whether it's a city ordinance, whether it's a state law, whether it's federal, that we can actually put into play. And again, I can't commit from Harrisburg that every bill that we put out on criminal justice that's going to get passed. I can't commit to that. But what I can commit to is that if we have sensible legislation, we can get the people around it to actually begin to advocate for things to get done. And I really believe that now is the time, and that the pieces are in the right place where we could move those things. The thing is, what are those things that we really think we should be moving that would positively affect folks?
Well,
May I?
Yes, and we're going to then move to the next panel because we have two more.
Thank you.
Your
I'm Judge Benjamin Lerner. I'm the Deputy Managing Director for Criminal Justice. First of all, let me say from my perspective in a couple of prior lives, first as Chief Defender and then for a long time as a Common Police Court Judge, I really applaud the legislature and the governor for its legislation on criminal records, both the law you passed last February and the Clean Slate Law. And I was particularly interested in hearing your reference to the pending bill that would fold the Department of Probation and Parole into the Department of Correction, which I think would have the effect of ultimately saving huge amounts of money and many years of people's lives by having a much more effective, efficient way of determining when people are ready to come home from state prison, and B, making sure that when that determination was made, it could be efficiently and promptly carried out under conditions that were not only good for the returning citizen, but good for the community. I think it's important to point out, though, that we are in the situation that we are in terms of our criminal justice system, largely because of decisions made by former legislators and former governors during years and years of a now discredited tough on crime philosophy, legislators, including, sadly, the one in Harrisburg, raced to pass stricter sentencing laws, mandatory sentencing laws, restrictions on individuals returning from prison. And although anybody involved in the government here in Philadelphia would say, gee, we'd like to see some money from Harrisburg for some of these programs, but we know that your budget situation isn't so much better than ours. While we're waiting for that to change, I think the most important thing that you're involved in and your colleagues are involved in is this new philosophy of being smart on crime rather than tough on crime. And if a lot of this older legislation, some of which already has been invalidated, can be removed from the books, we will have a much smoother passage towards the kind of criminal justice system we're all looking for.
I agree.
Representative, keep up the good work. And the lesson for today is that we'll learn to work better together.
Well, well, again, thank you so much for allowing me to kind of interrupt the flow just to speak. But I wholeheartedly believe it. And I'm not just saying this, but I wholeheartedly believe that we're doing the right thing, and we're protecting and making communities safer by addressing these issues. And the more we address them together on all levels of government, the more we continue to communicate, the more we continue to come up with a strategic plan on how to address it from a city, state, and a federal level, I think the better off all of our communities will be. The safer our communities will be, I think the less money we'll be spending on incarcerating folks, and the more we could see folks being put onto our city rolls as taxpayers and no longer tax burdens. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, will the clerk please read the title of the patient people to testify next?
Terrence Williams, Youth Organizer, Youth Art and Self-Empowerment Project. Joshua Glenn, Youth Organizer, Youth Art and Self-Empowerment Project. Troy Brooks, President, Troy Brooks Summer Program.
Thank you so much for your patience. Come on up to the table. Can't hear you. I can't hear you. Did you come over? So thank you so much for your patience. I do appreciate it. State your name for the record. Begin in any order. Bring the mic close to you.
Okay, my name is Troy Brooks.
Mr. Brooks, welcome.
Carolyn Bryant.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Joshua Glenn from the Youth Art Self-Empowerment Project.
Welcome.
My name is Terrence Williams with the Youth Art Self-Empowerment Project.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, I set up a program. Well, it's a couple programs I set up. The first one is a youth program, summer. And during the summertime, I grab kids at the age of 14 to 18. And during that time, I have them shadow me as I teach them different type. I'm a little nervous, y'all, so it's different trades. I said I'm a little nervous, though.
No, don't be. At least I do. I work for you. You pay taxes?
Yeah.
And I'm your employee. Don't be nervous.
Okay, all right, good. So I teach them different trades. And the way I get them is through social media. I usually get mothers contacting me and asking me if I can get their child to, learn a different trade, the trades that I'm in. I went to school for plumbing, electrical, heating and air conditioning, carpentry, so many different trades. So what I did this year was I actually went to friends that also have their own businesses, and I get them to get children, about four children apiece, and it's probably I have about 7 or 8 friends, and they also get children and mentor them during the summer, and the children shadow them during the summertime. And the outcome of this because I've been doing it personally probably about 3 or 4 years, and I'm telling you, I have moms contacting me and telling me how in the beginning a child was like doing nothing and stagnant and everything, to their child wanted to go to school for electrical, or their child wanted to go to school for plumbing and heating. Now during the wintertime, what I do also is I have friends or men that ask for employment. So what I do is train a lot of different men, and I have a few men here that I train, and once I train them on a trade, they also take in children, and the children shadow them. So my program worked during the whole year. Wintertime, I get men, train them, and during the summertime, them men also have children shadowing them, and they mentor them pretty much. Now, at the end of the program in August last year, I did 100 men, father and sons dinner. I had, the way I get the funding is through GoFundMe. This year, the owner of Brown's ShopRite, he's one guy that's helping me. Different people, comedians, whatever. So this year I'm doing 200 men and 200 of their sons. So it's 400, all you can eat, free buffet. So where the fathers get the sons, stepsons, nephews, and they come to have dinner, totally free. And they get to meet other men from different areas. And we sit down, we network, we talk, we just get to know each other. And I figured that was another way to make the city a better and safer place, where you have men from different areas, instead of when they see them in their area being, whatever, wanting to be aggressive, is a friendly meeting. And I know this to be true because this actually happened. I was somewhere in North Philly. I'm from Southwest. I was somewhere in North Philly, and the guy just came up to me and just started shaking my hand up, like, "Where I know you from?" And that's when he said, "We was at the father and sons dinner," and that was the aha moment for me. And it just made me feel good because I did that, and I wanted to do that for other men, meeting other men, and that's pretty much my.
That's pretty a lot. And probably somewhere in some temple way back in ancient Egyptian times, there was a group called Masons that probably started just that way, and that kind of brotherhood extended till now. So I appreciate what you're doing. Let me ask a couple of quick questions.
Mm-hmm.
How are you funded?
I'm funded by GoFundMe, friends, money out of my pocket right now. I'm here for help, actually. I'm here to testify for help because I usually do this, but a lot of times I have to turn moms away because I don't have enough people to take in, or I don't have enough time to take in so many children. I have so many letters and of women just asking, single moms asking for help, and I just feel so bad that I had to turn them away. And
have you ever filled out an application for funding, RFP for anything, any government?
Never.
Never. All right. So do you have within your cadre of resources somebody who knows how to write proposals?
Yes.
All right. So my suggestion would be that we need to connect you with, first of all, maybe sit around and try to, that group that evaluates, that just testified, that would be a perfect match for you to say, all right, we don't have a box for you yet, but here's the things that you do. You provide, I heard what you said, mentorship. You do CTE training. You do fellowship. You do intervention on some counseling. So all of those components, if we could kind of find a box for it, we probably can find funding for it as well. So I'd like to challenge them, and maybe we'll get you after this connected with them. And I'd love to sit in a room and see how that process would work, because I really want to go and meet them if they're beginning to identify diamonds in the rough. and providing them the resources to come to scale, this is the kind of program we're talking about. Yes, ma'am.
Initially, he started out of pocket, and it became a little more than I think he
Are
expected.
you in the program, or are you related?
No, I'm his support. I'm pretty much why he's here today. I kind of encouraged him to, I'm a DHS social worker, and I see a lot. So, and being a single parent with 3 sons, you know, I felt that when I read about his program and things of that nature, I contacted him myself and reached out to him, and I offered to help him. In addition to hearing his original story of him funding it, he was supposed to have been going in with some friends, and they backed out, and he didn't want to fail the children, so he continued to do it out of pocket initially, and then it became more children than he could afford, of why he had reached out to the other organizations to possibly make donations and things of that nature. So I said to him, because it's a great program, and it does not necessarily have to be a father, but a father figure, and to be able to network all of the other fathers sharing their stories and being a support to one another, I thought it was a great idea for him to come and speak with you.
Have you codified, I mean, have you determined what your budget is?
No, I haven't. Because honestly, I just was doing it out of the love of the city. You know what I mean? I love Philadelphia. I'm born and raised in Philly. I moved California. I moved to Atlanta, but I always miss Philly. So
you said you were from Southwest. Is it a citywide program?
Yes. Anyway, I'm actually in North Philly now. I live in North Philly, and I'm gonna tell you a story about what really inspired me to do this. Now I don't know if you know 18th and Cumberland. Any of you are familiar with that?
I have heard of 18th and Cumberland.
Right. So you know that area. So I live in that area. So I'm coming out every day, working back and forth. And a young man on the corner literally came to me and asked me. He said to me, "Listen, I got kids. I got a son. I got a kid's mom. We live in this apartment. I need your help. If you could just help me." He said, "I see you going to work every day. You mind your business. I just need something." And that just really touched me, that a grown man can come to me. And ever since then, I've just been trying to do what I can.
Well,
So,
God moves us the way he does and inspires us to do what we should. So I just want to try to figure out how to see I don't want to use this term, but I'm going to do it anyway. These 1,000 points of light, who used that? Reagan? Was it Bush? Well, I'm definitely not using that. Number 41 did? All right. So there are these positive things going on in the community, and some of them are independent of each other, and we just got to put them kind of in the right place to connect with resources, mostly to bring it to scale. So again, I described earlier the House of Umoja for me in my life, but trying to figure out how you do what you do and then to do it in a meaningful way for more young people is the challenge for us. So we'll get together with you offline. If the clerk will make sure we have his contact information to figure that out and put you with technical assistant people and some people, quite frankly, with some money, and to see if we can't do that. Is anybody else testifying on this panel? Sir?
How you doing? My name is Joshua Glenn, and I work with an organization called the Youth Art Self-Empowerment Project. And we're a youth-led organization that work with young people, and we go into the Philadelphia adult jails and do mentoring for young people through art and poetry. And then we also employ young people as organizers when they leave jail, so that we can encourage them to be organizers in their communities and stand up against the laws, some of the stuff that discriminate them in their communities, and police and all of the other.
Define organizer, because President Obama called himself an organizer. So what do you mean?
Well, basically, we're an organized organization that works to change the laws and stuff that we think are doing pain and problem to our communities. So that's what we consider organizers.
So how many young people have you mentored?
Well, we go into the Philadelphia adult jails every weekend, and we do concurrent workshops, ongoing workshops with young people, art and poetry every weekend. And then we also go into schools and we do workshops with young people about just being locked up and charged as adults, and like what it is, because
So you're talking about on State Road?
Yeah, on State Road. We work with the young people.
So the people that have been adjudicated adults?
These are Jim, I know a little bit about this. These are young men, almost all men. Sometimes there have been women in the program who, under state law, have been charged as adults because of the nature of the offense that they're charged with. And they are in a separate section at PIC, and the Youth Arts Empowerment Project is one of the two, I would say, based on my experience, one of the two major programs that operates in the prison for those people while they're awaiting their decertification hearings, which I also know something about.
Really? So we've been trying to get people to abbreviate their testimony. My co-chair said you should have read yours.
Yeah.
Why don't you do that?
You said.
Read your testimony.
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to do. I just wanted to explain.
Oh, this was the
kind
precursor.
of
Okay.
stopped.
All right.
So we work with young people that are locked up and charged adults, and we do basically peer-to-peer mentoring for young people, so that young people can mentor young people and show them how to be mentors, and that's what we do. So, but when I was younger, I was locked up, and I didn't have any. Well, when I was younger, I didn't have any good role models. So just like youth in low and poor income communities, I started hanging around the wrong crowd, and I started getting in trouble. The only reason I was able to change my life is because when I was released, I started working with YAS, and I received the proper support I needed to make positive change. Philadelphia should invest in more programs like YAS that focus on the root causes of why young people commit crime and develop strategies to help young people stay out of trouble by educating them about the criminal justice system and employing them as organizers to help them stand up against the injustice that the criminal justice system creates for them. At the age of 16, I was locked up and charged as an adult and held in an adult jail for a crime I did not commit. I was held pre-trial for 18 months because I couldn't afford bail. While I was locked up in an adult jail, it was like being in solitary confinement because we were housed on 2 blocks in the Philadelphia House of Correction, a very old and overcrowded jail. We spent so much time confined to 1 block or in our cells that it started to feel like I was an animal in a cage. At the end of those 18 months, my case was dismissed and thrown out due to lack of evidence. My experience there caused me to develop issues with trust and showing emotions. When I first got out of jail, my family ties were almost non-existent because I was so used to being alone that I didn't feel comfortable being around people. It took a long time for me to learn to let myself be close to people again. The worst part about the whole ordeal is that I didn't get to graduate from high school. I had to struggle to make up for those years and find a way to get my diploma once I was released. And to this day, the adult arrest still comes up when I apply for jobs. At the court date when my case was dismissed, my public defender tried to make me take a deal by saying I was going to lose the case if we went to trial. It was hard to say no because I just wanted to go home, but I refused to plead guilty to something I didn't do. I know hundreds of people that go through the same things I did when I was locked up, and many young people do give in to the pressures and accept guilty pleas, whether they're guilty or not, because they have been held for so long they just want to get out. In order to make real change and reduce crime, we have to stop holding thousands of people pre-trial, tearing apart families of people who are supposed to be innocent to proven guilty. We have to create more opportunities for young people in poor and low-income communities through education and employment, and not put poor people and their families in more debt than they were before they were arrested. We have to end cash bail and stop punishing young people just for being poor. We have to stop sending young people to adult prisons and jails and invest in resources to better their future instead of decades of incarceration. These laws have been destroying our communities for far too long. We need change now. That was my testimony.
Yes, it was.
Thanks. But also, so basically, what I learned through just being locked up and like being somebody that returned to the community and changed my life, the things that really helped me were just actually being able to go somewhere and receive proper education. And in the school system, for young people, they're not receiving a proper education, especially talking about the system. People don't know what's going on. They don't know that, you know, if they get locked up, they can do this amount of time. They don't know how serious it is, and they don't know how they're really, you know, targeting one at the group with locking them up. So basically what we do, we go into the schools and we do art and poetry workshops with young people just to show them how to do positive work, and just we basically mentor them and tell them about our lives and what we went through, and tell them, you know, what could happen to them, and it helps them to change. Not a scared straight type of tactic. It's just actually informing them of how the system is. You know, a lot of times when we go into school stuff, I go and tell my story about what happened to me. You know, I was locked up for 18 months, crime I didn't do. I was under 18, held in adult jail pre-trial. You know, after 18 months, they dismissed the case due to lack of evidence, but I'm still getting, when I go for a job interview, they still bring up the arrest that I've been charged with, and it doesn't make sense. And it's just one way that the system is holding people back. But as far as, you know, us changing our communities and helping young people, you know, become positive people, we have to show them through proof also. You know, people that are doing positive things have to show them how to be positive. And that's the thing that a lot of these organizations lack. They don't have real mentors for young people that are going through the same thing they're going through.
May I ask how old you are?
I'm 27 now.
Mm-hmm.
I was locked up at 16, and, you know, through this organization, I've been working with this organization for 10 years. I think actually over 10 years.
So the young people of your youth when you were 16, compared to the young people out there now, do you see any difference?
Actually, I don't. It's not really a difference. The only thing is just that it's actually the same. They don't have no mentors. They don't have any mentors, and they don't know what's going on in their communities to tap them into being a positive person in the community. You know, people are seeing negativity every day, and they're around negative people, and they have no good role models. There's nobody that comes and say, look, come to this organization, learn about your history, learn how to be a man. And, you know, and that's what a lot of these other programs lack. They're doing stuff based off of data. They're not doing stuff based off of people to people, you know, mentoring. And it's not really, it's ineffective.
What year were you at the House of Correction?
In 2000, I believe 5.
Okay. What kind of support did you get from your social worker that was assigned to you in the juvenile unit?
The jail was so overcrowded at the House of Corrections, everybody, you probably see the social worker once a month, maybe. So you have no time to build a relationship with the social workers there, because it's so overcrowded that they don't have the proper time to even evaluate you and talk to you.
Well, did they do any discharge planning with you while you were incarcerated?
They didn't do no. They just released me, and then, you know, I was trying to see was there some type of way I could sue or anything, because it took that big portion out of my life, and nobody helped me regain that. Nobody helped me get back into the society the right way, and I had to do everything through outside organization that should be getting the same type of funding as the other organizations, because it actually helps.
Any other questions? Thank you for your testimony. Young man?
Good evening. I'm Terrence Williams. I'm on the leadership team for the Youth Art Self-Empowerment Project, and I'm just here to give you a little bit of information about myself and tell you how being locked up and charged as an adult in the criminal justice system, the impact it had on me. I'm 20. I'm from North Philly. I ain't have nothing made for me growing up. I had a mom who struggled to pay bills, and she had just got over a drug addiction. I completed 22 months in adult and the juvenile facilities. I developed a commitment to serving my peers while being locked up and going.
I'm sorry, say that again. You developed
a strong commitment to serving my peers, and giving youth a helping hand when I joined and started going to the Youth Art Self-Empowerment Project while being locked up. I was arrested at 17. I got sent to State Road and charged as an adult, and being locked up as a juvenile and charged as adults, you get a set amount of people to visit you My mom ain't have it, so I didn't really have a good relationship with my mom. I had money on my books, and right, literally to no mail except for a little girlfriend I had. But it was stressful, and it was a hard time. It was the hardest time of my life. While I'm incarcerated, I was 17. I started going to the YAS program. They used to come in each and every Saturday to do art and poetry workshops and writing workshops, and that was the time and the place when I was locked up where I could express myself and all the built-up frustration I had to even being incarcerated. I got all of that out going to the Youth Art Self-Empowerment Project. I got sent to placement for 18 months, juvenile placement, and I took a plea bargain for 5 years adult probation. When I got the placement, I contacted Sarah from the Youth Art Self-Empowerment Project and told her that I would like to come home and tell my story and just get the targeted teens before it's too late and they probably go down the path I went through. Locking up youth and charging them as adults has a major impact on our community. Statistics say that youth who are charged as adults are more likely to come home and commit another crime and be arrested more than youth who stay in the juvenile system. You should not be charged as adults and sent to adult jails and prisons. If City Council and the Mayor are serious about providing opportunities and support to support young people and ending the school-to-prison pipeline, they should stop sending young people to adult jails and stop spending so much money on holding people pre-trial. The city should not use its money to build prisons and direct funding to alternatives to prisons like schools, recreation centers, libraries, and rehabs.
So there's a part in there about what you were arrested.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want, if you don't want to put it out there, I ain't. However, you didn't make those connects like that at 17. How did someone older kind of move you in that direction?
He didn't move me in the direction, but he suggested it, and I was going to do it. It wasn't no type of peer pressure, and it was just at the point in time in my life. At that time, I was down for anything to get some money.
Let me explain. I was from a gang. I had an old head. They had influence on me. What they said was the law. Was it like that for you?
Mm-mm. I was my own person. Like, it wasn't no peer pressure, nothing. He even asked me more than once, was I trying to do what I did? And I was like, why you keep asking? I'm with it, like that.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you changed because I read it. And, so today you realize that that's not the quick way. That's not the right way. There's a better, more steady way. I grew up with guys that probably are just now coming home based on Obama. I kid you not. So making that decision, when did it have your aha moment that I needed to do something different? Was it incarceration? You said this is not for me? Because
while being arrested, I was like, this ain't for me. I could have did a lot of time, but I missed it, and I wouldn't even probably been where I'm at today. Like, to have this job that I don't never want to lose, because it's not even a job. It's like more me helping my community become better, and I want to have my daughter. I would still probably be incarcerated if I didn't.
So some of the guys that are just now 30 years later, if you prorate what they made on them streets to an annual salary, they'd have worked out better at McDonald's. I mean, when you go upstate, you make, what, 16 cents an hour or whatever that is? What is the rate?
19.
How much?
19 cents.
19 cents, I'm sorry. So, yeah, we have to make better decisions, for the long term, for delayed gratification. So I'm very proud of you, in other words, that you thinking and not just reacting. So I appreciate that.
I wanted to commend you for the work that you do in the organization. We all talk about mentoring a lot, but to actually go in and talk to people your own age or close to it and share your experiences, I mean, it takes a lot of courage, but it's also really important. And from doing the work for a long time, I mean, I think that's the only way we're really going to change things. So very, very good.
Thank you.
Way to go. I mean, you're inspiring, all of you. You're very inspiring. A question I have, though, most of you are still very closely, and you're close in age to the youngsters you're influencing. What is it that you have that others that may go back to jail and get back in that lifestyle? You know, what is it that you have that they don't?
I'm a leader, that's for one. I think about my future. I think about having a good life, and I don't want to spend my years in jail or incarcerated away from my family. I think something that we possess is just experience with, like what we've been through and the way that we speak. It's more so, it's like the generations still are kind of connected with like the age rank, and it just, it's kind of, I think we just possess the experience, and when you go through something that somebody else is going through now, and then you can tell them how you overcame it and how you changed, I think that's really a clicker, and it like really hit homes with a lot of the young people, especially because we grow up in the same neighborhoods. You know, we've been through the criminal justice system, and we actually changed our life, like really changed our life, and are really doing good things in our communities. And I think that's something that we possess to help them become leaders, and they actually they kind of connect with our stories and what we've been through because they see their family members go through it, they see their friends go through it, and they're living it every day.
Any other, Your Honor?
Mr. Williams, I just want to tell you how happy I am to see you here and in this role. And I'm not going to go into that in any greater detail, except to point out that the law under which these two young men were arrested and charged as an adult is a state law. And it's a state law that came from that period of time that I mentioned when the representative was here, when the state legislature in Pennsylvania and in many other states were falling all over themselves to show how tough they were on crime. It is, I think, a tribute to people in the criminal justice system here, including district attorneys and defense lawyers, that for Mr. Williams, the only option under that state law did not turn out to be a long state court prison system. And I think you're a success story, and I'm really happy to see you here, and I wish you well.
Thank you.
Name 3 things we could do to make more of you. That if you were sitting up here, name 3 things that you would suggest to us to do to create more people like you.
Give people like me and Josh more job opportunities, because when I came home, I had a hard time getting a job, and I still have a hard time finding apartments and other things that they got to do a criminal background check.
This one.
Well, one thing we could do for the young people is that we can stop holding them in adult jails pre-trial, because it's really affecting our youth in a terrible way. I mean, everybody that, well, we actually know the facts. I don't know the exact number off the top of the head, but it actually increases the recidivism. The recidivism rate when you put young people in adult prisons pre-trial, and it's just because they're in that. Because I think it's the exposure to
basically, it's kind of like being in solitary confinement. And like, because they only have 2 blocks out the whole jail. It's a jail with probably 14, 15 blocks. And they only have 2 blocks that's for the young people. And it's an adult facility. And they don't have the programs and the stuff they need, the stuff that young people need in that jail, because they don't really have room for them people. They don't have room to have young people being held in adult jail. So they're basically neglected. And they're not able to receive the proper stuff they need to change.
So there's a sight and sound rule that they can't. Right.
Well, the situation's changed a lot since Josh was there. The facility is different. It is still a wing. It's a wing of PIC. It's a wing devoted entirely to juveniles who've been charged as adults. It's difficult to keep the adults and the juveniles separated. The acting commissioner and the new commissioner have a plan to actually move all of the juveniles awaiting decertification hearings into a completely separate facility on the grounds of the county prison. I will say, however, that, and I think it's in the interests of balance, it's important to point this out. There's a school operated there, Pennypack School. Right. Small groups, dedicated, certified teachers. Ms. Julie and I were up there, as a matter of fact, as recently as last week, and watched some of the classes. I can tell you that the young men in those classes were demonstrating better attendance, and I think getting better teaching than they had been before they were locked up. Mayor Kenny visited that school early on and commented on the irony of the fact that for a good deal of our population, in order to get them good schooling with controlled classes in a quiet atmosphere, they had to get themselves locked up first, which is obviously not something we want to be proud of. But the school programs, the youth empowerment program, do a lot of good work.
Quick question. Did anybody from the faith-based community go visit you and provide any type of encouragement, being a Christian or Muslim or?
When I was incarcerated?
Excuse me?
When I was incarcerated?
Yeah, both of you.
Not that I know of.
So no social worker access and no one from the faith-based community?
I mean...
So YASP is who gave you
basically
an outlet and...
Yeah. And then basically, what we do, well, I actually participated in a program when I was locked up too. Back then, those 10 years ago, that's how I met YAS too. And then we just sat down, we talked about ways that we could help young people stop going to jail. And what we came up with was, all right, one, they need employment, or they need something to do positive so that they can change. And then two, they need peer-to-peer mentoring, because the thing is, we thought about it, when adults tell young people to do certain stuff, it's totally different. When like your parent tell you don't go out there or don't do that, well, then when somebody's at your age and at the same type of mental level as you, tell you, you know, this is what we think is cool to do. And I think it's language, like when you're dealing with people in those, like when you're dealing with young people from urban areas, you got to have people from urban areas teaching them how to be positive leaders in their communities. And that's what we do lack. That's what we lack. That's why our organization does that, and it's great. But we need more organizations like us, and we also need support from the city for our organization, because we do get our funding from grants and we do proposals and stuff. But at the same time, the city should be doing that. You know what I'm saying? They should be helping programs like this that develop people into positive leaders that are coming out of the prison system. That's all we have to do. All we have to do is have opportunity for them to change, and people will change. We don't have that, and that's the real problem. So I think that's 4 things that we could do, like we could do collectively to change things.
we're trying to find all of the pathways out of incarceration we can find.
Yeah.
And there's no one size fits all.
Yeah, for sure.
Everything, different things for different people.
Yeah.
And so some people are arts, some people work with their hands and hammers, some people do other things. So we want to find positive ways to engage young people so they never, ever, ever have to stay stuck in that process. So again, we appreciate your testimony. It is duly noted. And you ain't never got to be afraid of people who work for you. All right?
We appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Excuse me, wait a minute. Hold up. Nobody can. So she can't hear you, and it's not on here. So hold up. Will the clerk please read the names of the next group to testify? If you want to say something.
Reginald Carter,
come around here.
Criminal Justice Workshop. Reuben Jones, Frontline Dads. Berto M. Elmore, attorney.
Stace, can you see anyone? Thank you guys for your patience, but you can see there's a wealth of information that we're being provided. We don't want to cut anybody off.
It's a great meeting.
Did you raise your hand? Did you raise your hand? All right, yes. Then you may go. Thank you for your patience. Please be seated. Good afternoon. State your name for the record, and please begin your testimony.
My name is Reginald Carter, known also as Abdullah, formerly incarcerated. I did about 11 years in the state prison system, former gang member, former gang leader, former imam in the state correctional system, and Islam certainly played a role in helping me to develop out of a mentality of self-destruction. And I'm here to add whatever I can possibly add to the process of transformation. And one of the things that I am certainly interested in is oversight and accountability and transformation. And I'll talk about that a little bit later.
Go ahead. So we'll one at a time.
Okay.
Unless you, is everybody testifying?
I was just introducing myself.
Is everybody testifying?
Well,
Yes?
I would probably be the shortest, but yeah.
Well, let's go with you first.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to address this committee. My name is Bert Elmore. I'm an attorney. I've been practicing here in Philadelphia for approximately 25 years. I'm here representing people that cannot be here, and I told them that I would come and speak for them. There is an organization called Real Street Talk, which is a organization in Bradford Prison. They wanted me to come and ask you to consider their expertise. These gentlemen are primarily lifers that have been incarcerated well over 25, 30, 35, 40 years. And they created a concept, a program, basically a movement of stopping mass incarceration, stopping young people from coming to jail. They created this. Obviously, they had to get themselves together after years and years of reflection, and they decided that they just didn't want to sit and make time go by, let time go by. They wanted to do something to impact the community, and developing a collective leadership among themselves, they created this Real Street Talk. Now, it's impossible for me to go over all of what they do and so forth in this amount of time. What I'm here to ask is that this committee accept, look for, and get with them. Obviously, they cannot be here. They're incarcerated. What they bring is an expertise that's rare, that normally does not have an opportunity to come to these type of things, and that's why I'm here. I would suggest that, if possible, because what they do is so unique and so powerful, and that this committee would either go to Bradford, because Bradford is one of our largest prisons, is one of the largest in the country, and I think to go there and it would show and I practice criminal law. And, you know, in jail, there is a hierarchy. And what you have is that you got the guys come in 2 to 4, 3 to 4. But in jail, the ones that command the respect and get it are the lifers. And they have something to give, they have something to share. And they're willing to do that. And I think that it would really impact. See, in prison, and I don't know how they do it, but in prison, they know what goes on in the streets. They really do. And they have the ability to pass that to people that are not here. That, you know, and the criminal justice reform is a big issue, particularly in the people of color communities. But these halls are not packed. A lot of it is because people don't believe that, well, is this for real? But I think real street talk can show you how to impact and help legitimize and let everybody know that, see, the people that you really want to deal with, that they deal with every day. Everybody that goes to state prison goes through Bradford, and their program is designed to talk to and reach every inmate that goes through the prison system. A lot of them are from Philadelphia. We all know that. And a lot of them are going to return home to Philadelphia. Most of the founders are from Philadelphia. So I think that they have this uniqueness about them that will allow a lot of credibility. If you go talk to them, I think that word would spread that this is just not another talk committee, that you guys are really seriously want to understand the problems and solve the problems, and it will spread through the ex-offender community, because we have a community here well over 250,000 ex-offenders. Not only are they they're not going anywhere, they need to be talked to, and these individuals that I've talked to and met and participated with have already collected the data on these individuals, and they have many people involved in their database. So they can help with this actual reform, tell people about these type of meetings, tell people to participate, and they have credibility. I cannot emphasize enough, myself and another group of attorneys, there's about 8 or 9 attorneys that they have been able to pull together to support their efforts. And I just think that it would really be I'm requesting, they have programs, I'm requesting, even though they cannot be here, you know, they just can't. But you guys can review what they have. They've written 2 books. They have an extensive program. One of the things that I wrote down, they said to me, but you can't talk about reentry without money. It was you have to have the ability to, you can't talk about criminal justice reform without money in play. This is them talking, you know. I'm just asking this committee, if it's possible, to develop some type of video conference or either go there and review Real Street Talk. It is a very positive program, and with that, I'm not going to say, I have that, they sent me almost 100 pages to read, and I just didn't have enough time to read and explain it all. I wouldn't dare try to do that. But they have already got it in place. It's something that will work, and they're the experts. I asked one of them guys in party, and I asked one of the guys, I said, how long would it take you to talk to someone that's coming in the prison system to know if they're going to return? He said, I've been here 37 years, it takes me 2 to 3 minutes. I can tell you exactly. He can tell you, he'll be back. You know, that's what type of expertise you have there. So I would appreciate it if you would look at the information we're going to submit to the committee. And I'm going to apologize. Shaka Johnson, who's one of the attorneys that's involved with Real Street Talk, is on the list, but he got tied up in court. and couldn't make it.
So
But
watch-
thank you for your time.
Thank you. And watch this. Yes. So, one word, yes. So so, couple of things. Councilman Johnson and I just came back from Greatersford 3 weeks ago. Met with the coalition of lifers and other organizations, because it's about half dozen of them, and they've done something unprecedented. They stopped being in silos. They started working together to talk about the reentry process from inside to outside and cutting with an eye towards cutting down recidivism. Julie has also talked about us doing an actual hearing up on State Road. But one of the things that we would like to consider is doing a teleconferencing with the, some of us will go up, but all of us, based on time constraints, might not be able to go up, but we can set up teleconferencing so that it's a live feed, so that the discussion can happen in two places, one up there and one down here. So the simple answer to your question and request is yes.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
William Cobb, I just want you to offer back to the brothers in Bradford that a person who has done time in Bradford, who was mentored by the lifers who were there, so many that I don't want to neglect mentioning some of them that helped me navigate through corrections in the beginning of my incarceration all the way through to the end. So let them know that someone is here who has experienced what they are currently experiencing, and they are very correct in regards to mentioning money. It ultimately is going to come down to money. The city of Philadelphia alone spends approximately $300 million on State Road every year. Our only reentry program that the city had was folded into the prison system with a budget of only $700,000. We know that there are estimated 30,000 people returning from federal, state, and local prisons to the city of Philadelphia each year. You underestimated the number of people who have been in conflict with the criminal justice system by about 150,000. So there are about 400,000 of us who have been in touch with the criminal justice system. Please let the brothers know that I am here, and as a result of me being here, they are also here.
I would certainly appreciate those words, and I would definitely let them know that that their voice is going to be heard in part of this procedure. Thank you very much.
And I want to echo that too. I'm with the Pennsylvania Prison Society. We work with lifers through the years. It's important to have that voice, and without it, I don't think this committee could really be complete. So I'm glad you brought it up, because otherwise I was going to.
All right.
So really, just to echo what they said, this is in part about them.
Okay.
And many of them I had opportunity to talk to realized up there what it was all about, and want to dedicate themselves to preventing anybody else from coming. And I can name 10 or so things that they have done and been engaged in a positive way that have helped us out here already. So, yeah.
I will give that information to them. I'm sure they will be pleased. I certainly am pleased that this committee will integrate their discussion and programs into this great effort that is, which is really overdue. And I'm just, as a criminal defense attorney, I'd like to just say I appreciate it. And I hope that while some of us that practice law, and I'm just going to say this, there are a lot of people that have an interest in continuing mass incarceration, very financial interest. And I just happen to be a part. Some of them don't want it to end, but I'm not one of those.
Thank you for your help. Thank you for your testimony, sincerely. Okay, gentlemen, bring us home.
So good afternoon, council and commission members. My name is Reuben Jones, and I just want to share 2 points with you. I have a lot to talk about. I don't know about our time situation, so I'll be as brief as possible. I have 2 asks that I'm going to present to the commission today, and not necessarily ask on behalf of Frontline Dads, which is the program that I represent. And one of the things that we do is mentor young people, which we've heard a lot of talk about mentoring. But the project that is most relevant to this discussion is the Peacemakers Project that we engage in which we have a traveling workshop, if you will, to teach young people conflict resolution skills. And we've done this we have one coming up at Ben Franklin High School. We've done it at Temple University, Arcadia, the Friends Center, Sankofa, Harambe Institute. I mean, there's a long list of interventions that we conducted with the proposition of teaching young people how to peacefully negotiate and resolve conflict as a measure of violence prevention. Some of the folks who have participated in some of our workshops include Dorothy Johnson Spite, George Mose, Judge Lori Dumas, Kelvin Anderson, and the list goes on, who brought their expertise to the table to conduct, facilitate a workshop or serve on a panel to share with young people their insights and experiences to help move them to a place of being change agents in their communities, in their schools, in their families. But one thing I really want to kind of present, since we're talking about this summer, we talk about violence prevention measures to help curtail some of what we see when we look at the media, when we look at the news. There's another horror story every day. There's another tragedy every day. And, you know, sometimes it's unsettling when I have to explain to my 6-year-old, you know, what's on the news and what's happening in the world, to the point that, you know, I try to catch news every morning before I leave the house, and, you know, we've come to the point that he doesn't even want me to watch the news in the morning, you know, because it's just so disheartening and so painful. But so the proposition I want to come to, now I'll come back to talk about our program, because I don't want to come here and sell our program. What I want to do is propose two things. A, we know that in this city, about 80% of the homicides that occur happen to African American males. And unfortunately, in most cases, the perpetrator is an African American male. So I want to solicit this commission well, I don't even know what the process would be, but somehow get the mayor involved to declare homicide in Philadelphia a public health crisis, specifically gun violence, a public health crisis. I think that if we don't move with some urgency at this moment in time, then we're going to see a continued escalation, and we're going to, sometimes, you know, I feel like we're living in the movie New Jack City. You know, when you see some of the things that are happening, the atrocities and the numbers, and I don't know if we've reached that tipping point that, you know, it's the point of no return for us. I don't know that. But I do know that if we declare gun violence a public health crisis, and with all the resources that and attention that comes with addressing it, then I think we have a much better focus in terms of prevention. So that's number one. Number two, as unpopular as it may be, there's a lot of talk in the city around the sugary drink tax. And I'm not here to endorse the sugary drink tax, but I do want to submit that none of the talk I've heard about the funding to be generated from the sugary drink tax, none of it has identified violence, specifically violence prevention, as a focal point. So my suggestion is, if we could somehow solicit some of that resource to be generated from the sugary, I'm a supporter of community schools. I serve on the Universal Pre-K Commission. All those things are great. But when we talk about what should be the number one priority in terms of public safety for the citizens of this city, and I think we have to, you know, pay some attention to, and attention means not just dialogue, but also financial resources, you know, boots on the ground, community-based interventions to identify and address particularly gun violence. So we talked a lot about some of the other interventions that are represented here today, and we know that Philadelphia is off the court as being the city of neighborhoods, right? The problem is a lot of these neighborhood conflicts are intergenerational. They go back for 2 and 3 generations. My grandfather was at war with your grandfather. Therefore, you better not cross that line. So I do think that the mentoring helps. Like I said, I run a mentoring program. I do think jobs help. I do think that basketball helps. But if we limit ourselves to the low-hanging fruit of jobs, of basketball, of mentoring, then I think we're going to miss the mark. And we have to get down to the ground level and start creating the opportunity for these people who are in conflict with each other to resolve it. Because most of the time, we don't even know, or they don't even know what the root of it is. It's just, this is the code of the street that we follow, and if you violate, this is the consequence. So at some point, we had to be the courageous leaders to step forward and put those two opposing sides in the same room together at the same time with the same agenda. They've done conflict resolution in South Africa. They've done it in even Afghanistan. They've done it in Israel. They've done it in Ireland. And all over the world, it works when you bring folks together to resolve a conflict peacefully, when you identify an end game. And I don't know why we believe that in Philadelphia, this is the only place on the planet that it can't work. But my proposition to this commission is to engage in some effort through the sugary tank tax to get it funded so that we can address some of these conflicts at the ground level, which includes mental health treatment, of course. Some of the outrageous incidents that we've seen is obviously acts of, violence that's caused by some challenges that haven't been addressed. So I think I'm going to wrap up my portion of testimony at that point. And again, I'm open to talk about the peacemakers that we are engaging in over the summer. We identified 12 locations over the summer, so that every week, from the time the school is out to the time the school returns, that we'll be able to do an intervention in a different neighborhood of the city to really take the tools to the community that needs the most, to really bring it directly to the people, not ask them to come to us, and really teach young people how to be at the forefront of changing the face of Philadelphia, how to be at the forefront to becoming a change agent, to de-escalate situations. We know that at the heart of a lot of these situations is social media, and as soon as there's not even a fight, as soon as somebody exchanging words or a glance, everybody has their phone out, taking a video, a selfie, a picture, and post on social media, and we see it just kind of take off from there. So we want to help teach these young people how to step away from that and actually intervene, because nobody has greater influence. The young man already said it. Nobody has greater influence on a young person than another young person. Yo, man, chill. It ain't even worth it. Cool out. We'll go a lot further than even the judge saying something, because at the end of the day, they're not afraid of going to jail. They're not afraid of even dying. But we have to make them or teach them to respect life, to value life, and to value each other, and learn to be a part of the solution and not the problem. So that's what I'll offer to this commission. I'm available for questions if you have any.
So, first of all, thank you for what you do. On your initial request about whether or not we should treat it as a health crisis, if you just look up Broad Street, Temple University teaches now first responder for people just walking down the street. We're at a point where they have to know first aid and trauma relief just to be a friend to someone. And so that speaks to the nature of the heightened sense of violence in some zip codes. Today they put out a zip code list of mortality rates by zip code. So if you live in this zip code versus that zip code, you might live 3 years longer on average. There is a disparity of, 20 years in some parts of Philly to the other part of it. And it ain't the Schuylkill punch that's making it different.
Right.
So yes, it has to be treated in effect like a health crisis. By way of conflict resolution and bringing people together, well, I know it works, because back in my day, Sister Falaka brought different warring groups together, and some of them are my best friends now. Some of their kids play with my kids, and imagine how that would be if it didn't go that way. So it can be done. The question is, for Philadelphia, what do you prioritize? Not with your verbalization, but with your budget.
Right.
So a lot of these things that you do are there, you exist, but how do you bring it to scale so that it has an impact on neighborhoods? And that's what we're trying to, there's a lot of good out there, but what we're trying to determine is how much does it good cost and how long does good take to kick in? Julie?
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Jones. The one thing to your point on it being a public health crisis, I think in addition to the program that the Councilman mentioned about that's going on with the trauma centers at Temple, we are seeing other programs that have taken that bent as it's appropriate to do, such as Ceasefire, which is the cure violence model out of Chicago, which is also run out of Temple, out of their med school. In addition, we have doctors from Drexel who run a program called Healing Hurt People. And so this idea of the trauma not only to the body but to the mind of what violence does to our communities, I think has been emerging for quite some time and it will continue to make an impact on how we deal with this issue.
William Carr. Mr. Jones, thank you for your testimony. You indicated that you run a program and you didn't want to sell it. Well, if this commission is successful, at some point in time, we will garnish resources, and then we will be looking for organizations that have definitive measurable impacts, and as Councilman indicated, the time frame. So I actually want to push back a little bit and have you tell us some things about your program, but specifically the number of young people that you are able to touch with your current funding and what your potential is if you were fully funded.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Let me just address a couple things. Before I even get to that, when I talk about the public health crisis, I'm talking about something very specific because we like to talk about PTSD. And the reality is the youth that I know, the youth that I grew up in the 3-2 zip. So the people that I grew up with, the people that I've seen die, I spent 15 years in prison myself. So the PTSD is kind of thing, it's kind of an academic approach. Our children live in sustained traumatic experiences. They relive it over and over again. They don't exit from it. They're re-traumatized over and over again. And I have tremendous respect for Drexel and the Healing Hurt People. I participate with their citywide effort. Temple, we take our youth to Scott Charles's Cradle to the Grave program. I'm very familiar with Wayne Jacobs in the whole bringing the war zone triage kind of practice to the streets. Very familiar. But I'm talking about something completely different. Our children do not have an opportunity to return home from war to a safety zone. Our children are not only born into these war zones, but they're socialized into a war zone that tells them that violence is the way that you resolve conflict. And it takes a lot to break through that. And I don't minimize any effort by any program or any person that's ever happened. But I will say, you asked, someone asked Shakima about, what about the kids who don't get the jobs, right? I thought that was probably the most profound question of the day.
That was my question for the record.
Okay, so let me give you an answer to that question. So what happens to them, if you tracked it, would be the same kids who drop out of school, would be the same kids whose father, grandfather, uncle upstate, would be the same kids who were bullied, would be the same kids who end up at the Youth Study Center, who would be the same kids who transition over to PIC, who would be the same kids that matriculate to SCI Greater Ford. So we already know what happens to those kids because those kids know nobody cares about them. It doesn't matter how many speeches are made. They know, they see it. When the investment is made in their communities, let me go a step further because I went to the Villanova celebration the other week, but when I go back to the community, you know what they say? They don't care about us. They They spent money for Villanova, and I can't get this vacant lot of my block cleaned up. So that's what they see. So they hear the words, but what they see is they're not prioritized. So beautiful word that you use. So if we don't take this whole approach in the context of prioritizing all of the citizens of this city and making them feel like an equitable partner, then what you'll have is people who feel disenfranchised, and they'll disconnect, and they'll create this whole kind of underworld, this whole other existence that unfortunately most people don't even see until the police comes in to put the cuffs on because they violated someone. And that's the sad part of it, that there are a lot of opportunities along the way that we can intervene and prevent that. So to your question, Mr. Cobb, so here's two proud moments I give you about the children we impact. We took 54 young people to President Obama's inauguration. No funding, no grants, no anything, just hustle from the muscle. So we got, kids selling candy bars, we're, accepting donate, all these other things to come up with alternative ways to pay for what our vision is. So, and my belief system is that whatever you believe in, whatever you're passionate about, you figure it out, because it's not somebody's obligation to do that. So I hear what you're saying, but the struggles and the commitment that we made to the young people over the years didn't come from the desire or the need for a grant. It came from people, all volunteer staff. Nobody gets paid, right? People who are committed to transforming the lives of young people because they transform their lives themselves. So what could the capacity be if it was funded? I don't know. I just don't. I can't even answer that. All I know is the work that we do is from the heart, based on the commitment we have to the young people.
Just so you know, Mr. Jones, I'm not here talking about building a statue to Villanova. I'm talking about saving them babies.
Oh, no.
So that maybe they can get to Villanova on a scholarship. But let me just say this.
And we all want the same thing. I'm just, giving you the sentiment of the community.
And I agree with the community. Right. We don't prioritize. I could point out the window where we put all that money into that plaza.
Absolutely.
That's about, what, 40 million? We gave 20 more million to the W Hotel down the street that's getting built. Right. And then we get ready to do the, what is that? The parking, Love Park, right? That's 100 million. Easy. In between 3 blocks. You know what our poverty commitment is from the federal government to here? 43 million. So if you love what you love, you'll fund it.
Right.
And that's why we're here. Right. So you're right. And we want to try to get better at that. So to let them know that we do care. And you're so right. People, there's a disconnect between the day-to-day life of a kid at 16th and Cumberland and what we think 50,000 feet up in the air is good. And so we got to get a little closer on making it relevant to them. And that's why we're here.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I think most of when we talk about grassroots community organizations, I could probably name 20 just off the top of my head. They're all funded out of pocket. I mean, the brother said he teaches them the skills, the trades. They fund these programs out of pocket because they care about their communities. And if there was one umbrella opportunity to support the grassroots and connect the grassroots to resources, I think we'll see a tremendous difference in the city of Philadelphia.
Well, we want you to keep doing what you're doing. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. We'll meet on Broad Street and celebrate life.
Celebrate
for some
life.
Kids that probably wouldn't have had it but for what we're doing.
Absolutely.
And hopefully with a check so you can continue to do your
effort. Get that money too. Yeah, get the money.
Okay. Reggie Abdul again. Thanks again for this opportunity. When our brother was talking about the crisis of our young people killing each other, the thing that I immediately thought of is that why are our young people actually killing each other? Why are black people more prone to death than other people? And the answer is racism. It's racism. The death and destruction in our communities is a deliberate act. when we talk about collateral consequences, there are some people that work within the system that mean to hurt us, and they do it, and they make money doing these things. With the Philadelphia Black Political Summit Coalition, the Criminal Justice Workshop came up with the concept of creating an oversight and accountability initiative to look at all facets of criminal justice and to have oversight, accountability, and transformation. I was listening to a lot of the people, the presenters here today, and with all of the great questions, and we're talking about a massive amount of money being spent on a lot of things that aren't working. We're talking about people who are duplicating things and making it sound rosy and cheery so that they can keep duplicating things. One of the points that you made, Brother Curtis Jones, was that Sister Falaka Fatah and her family, people in the community, got out and did things, and people knew they were from the community. There's a difference when you can feel and sense something. When I went to prison at 18 years of age, as a former gang leader, I received education behind the wall from a lot of brothers that had life sentences. At that time, some of them were former Black Panthers, and the guys that were the Nation of Islam, and some Muslims. And I was still into a mode of ignorance, and they would say, man, come here, let me tell you something. Because I'm going to share this with you, it's kind of embarrassing. I was in a cell at Dallas, in the hole, and I was talking to a brother named Jeff Mims, and we were talking. I said, yeah, man, the good hair. He said, wait a minute. See, where did you get that good hair stuff from? See, you got that from the white man, didn't you? And I began to become educated about the effects of racism, and we know that mass incarceration today, it stems all the way back to slavery. So we're going to be educating our children. We have to set up an educational model that tells them exactly why they're doing what they're doing as a means to try to help prevent some of those things from happening. We know that we need economic infusion. You mentioned all of this money going to things, it makes things pretty, it's good for people visiting Philadelphia, but it doesn't really help the community that needs to be helped, the at-risk community. And I like that term because it's a reality. So everybody, people that are engaged in criminal justice provisions, they need to be watched on all levels, county, state, and federal. And they need to be watched by us as a group of people, not just by elected officials. One of the problems I have with elected officials, no offense, in doing a whole lot of things is that they tend to be political. And some things have become a political football. They can actually work. But people say, hey, I don't want you because you were the last administration put this together, and I'm going to stop this because that's not what we want to do, and I have a conflict with you. So now I'm a political football where I could have been getting some help. Now that help is not there. So we're talking about transformative efforts. We're talking about doing what other people have been doing to the Black community, using us having a parasitic relationship with us. We need to start wrapping people around our needs. Our needs outweigh their relationships with us in terms of just being exploitive. We have to take a very close look at all of the service providers to make sure that they're following their 501c3s, number one, and that they're being effective. We have to have a committee of people of oversight and accountability that can go into those prisons and be watching people. People tend to act different when you're watching them. So I can't do that, so-and-so's over there, I can't. They said, man, here come the imam, stop what you're doing, I had that experience in prison. I was an imam for a particular point in time. The guy told me, he said, man, when you showed up, man, we used to have to straighten up. So we all need to be watched, and we need to watch each other so that we can have a better development. Any questions, please?
Any questions for this panel? And the reason I'm rushing is because our stenographer needs a break. So it's real. So we're going to take a 10 minute, we'll split it, recess and then reconvene afterwards.
Let me say this before you go, brother. If we can do a subcommittee on accountability, oversight and accountability, that would be great.
Got it. We're coming back.
We'll come back. Okay, I'll be here.
All right.
5 minutes. Oh, she's only doing 5 minutes.
Sorry.
Huh?
I'm gonna have to go.
We couldn't afford to keep you here, so if I had to pay you. I know. How many more people we got?
We only got 6 more.
Only 6? Only? I'm asking no more questions. That's the amount of questions.
Because I don't have a problem with Rich sitting there.
You're up
Hey, young
next
lady.
with the next panel. Jonathan Wren.
Will you please come up to we're going to try to get everybody that's going to testify in. We want you a part of the record. Thank you for your patience. We're going to begin with this young man right here. He had to look away. You know, you're the only young man that... Yeah.
He's still looking for the young man.
Yeah. The gentleman to our right.
Okay.
You. Yes.
All right, so I can begin?
Yeah, would you say your name?
Oh, okay. So my name is Shamar Beasley.
Pull that closer.
I'm sorry?
Pull the microphone closer, please.
Gotcha. All right, so my name is Shamar Beasley. I'm a sophomore over at Drexel University studying political science. While at Drexel, I serve as president of the Drexel Black Action Committee, the president of the Drexel Rotary Club, vice president of Drexel Democrats, and vice president of Real Street Talk organization that has at least 30,000 members inside of the organization. So through all of my positions and schooling, I've learned some very important information regarding the criminal justice system, as well as the politics behind it. One thing that is absolutely obvious to myself, the people in this room, President Darrell Clark, and almost everyone in the United States is that our city is locking people up at an alarming rate while seeing literally no difference in our criminal rate. As Mark Holden said on Friday's meeting, it costs $35,000 to $40,000 per year to incarcerate someone in Philadelphia. This is an astronomical amount of money, considering that we have 9,400 men and women in prison in this city today. To put those numbers together, it says that we spend roughly $329 million a year that is only going towards the housing of the inmates, literally just the housing. Not even mentioning the amount it costs for paying the salaries to have more cops on the streets, not even taking into consideration the amount of money it costs for more prison guards, and definitely not taking into consideration the amount of money it costs for more prosecutors to arrest these people. This is a problem that I'm very happy to hear being addressed by this council today. And just as Representative Harris said earlier, this mass incarceration system that we have creates a huge cacophony of problems for post-release, some of which includes denial of public housing, denial of public loans, and extreme difficulty finding a job after one is released. These are problems that are easily found through a small amount of research. What's difficult to find is solutions to these problems. One of the main problems of the current criminal justice reform talks that we have in the United States is that it still treats those arrested as if they are a menace to their environment and they need to be dealt with. It does not address individuals that were wrongfully accused, like Josh of the third panel earlier, or even those individuals that are coerced into guilty pleas. My solution would address the fact that implicit bias is a problem for literally every part of our criminal justice system. I would like to suggest that a preventative approach to the criminal justice reform system would be very warranted and necessary. That's why I would propose that implicit bias training become mandatory for all cops, judges, jurors, and prosecuting attorneys. It will give our justice system a much-needed boost of fairness that is long overdue. The Harvard Law Review, through Cass Sustine and Christine Joles, in an article named The Law of Implicit Bias, addresses how implicit biases are present in almost all Americans, and how trainings of these implicit biases will help to identify these issues and ultimately solve them. In Philadelphia, we could be the first to lead this movement of ending modern-day slavery, or mass incarceration, as we are all more comfortable saying. Secondly, an organization I got involved with earlier this year, through Mr. Berto Elmore back there, called Real Street Talk, strongly suggests that this city stop the hold on individuals regarding employment. Many Black and Latino Philadelphians being released from prison have little to no way to go back to a normal lifestyle because of the lack of money. Bertel Elmore Esquire stated earlier that we have written, that Real Street Talk has written a book on how to get people to address their wrongdoings, their wrong lifestyles, and ways to start legal entrepreneurship. So just as Mr. Burt said, I would encourage you guys once again to go out and speak to these individuals. Just as they sent him out an 80-page proposal, they sent me out a 26-page proposal that, due to my schooling and all the clubs I run, I didn't necessarily have enough time to truly present it before you. It's a lot of information in there, trust me. All right, so ultimately what I suggest is that we end this war on drugs, and we suggest that people get second chance programs rather than incarceration or prison time for nonviolent drug offenses. So with that being said, I want to once again thank you all for your time. Thank you, Ms. Grant, for putting me on the agenda for today, although it was a little bit late. And thank you guys for starting this criminal justice reforms program and dedicating all your time to it.
So, like, other than wanting to run over there and hug you and say, you know, give you a bro hug, where are you from?
West Philadelphia, 59th and Christian.
Where?
59th and Christian.
Okay.
It's up by the Cobbs Creek area.
I know where it is.
Oh, yeah.
It's not my district, but I do know where it is.
Yeah.
And so, have you ever gotten in any trouble?
No, but I have had a lot of friends that unfortunately have been.
So, if you don't mind me asking, what was the difference in your life that made you different than your friends?
Certainly. So, I mean, given the fact that we all grew up in the same area, we did have to go through very similar problems, such as, you know, losing close friends of ours to either incarceration in long time periods or even, unfortunately, death before the age of 18 through, like, unfortunate shootings and whatnot. So, to say the very least, we pretty much had the same type of mindset. The one thing that kind of led me to a different path, I guess, was an organization I got involved with called Summer Search Philadelphia. So they sent me first to Colorado for, it was like an expedition program in which I got to hike through the mountains. I got to live in the Southern Rockies for an entire week, and I even climbed a mountain called Rolling Mountain in the Southern Rockies. Through that experience, it made me see that, you know, the world is bigger than just Philadelphia, that there's different mindsets that are out there, that, you know, the things that we value as, like, Philadelphian people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds is a little bit different than, I guess, the rest of the world. And it made me start, exploring more options and looking into other things from there. It also led me, Summer Search also sent me to Nicaragua for my second year as part of the program completely for free, in which, once again, it just completely expanded my horizons beyond anything imaginable and ultimately led to me getting a full scholarship to Drexel. So
now, millennial, are you a millennial? I mean, I'm not even
yes,
sure
I'm
what.
20 years old.
You
So.
I get confused. So many successful people that wind up navigating inner cities and getting out don't look back. Once they get out, they see the Rocky Mountains, they don't look back. What made you come back and give back?
So just as I was saying, like, many of my friends are still affected by this today because they weren't given the same opportunities. They weren't, given the type of funding that I received. I received like up to, about $30,000, $40,000. Literally the amount that we take to incarcerate a person for a year is what it took me to actually go ahead and get this life-changing experience that led to a full scholarship to Drexel. So that was one of the main things. Like, whenever I would speak to them and they would say, like, another one of our friends got killed, or like, I would speak to them and see the mindset that they had, where it was just, retaliation rather than anything else, and more so them being criminalistic in their mindset, that led me to say, like, something has to be done. Something has to actually, like, someone has to actually step up to the plate and try to cause some type of change, in these environments that aren't necessarily being brought to the forefront.
Do anybody or the commission have any other questions?
Thank you for your open and honest testimony. I want to hug you too, brother. We really appreciate that you are young, articulate, well-spoken, thoughtful, and so generous of your time. And you still don't have to be compassionate. You still don't have to have empathy, but you do. but I do want to take a little something back from you. I know lots of people will consider you exceptional, but what you stated, the experiences that were lended to you, well, good, so you agree with me. I always say that there are no exceptional people.
Yeah.
Just people who have been given extraordinary opportunities. And so thank you for taking advantage of the exceptional opportunity that you were provided. You made us feel good today. This stuff is heavy, and you really lightened this, the mood of the room today. So thank you for your testimony.
It's not all doom and gloom when we see you.
Right.
All right?
And just so you're aware, you may not be aware, but under the MacArthur grant, implicit and explicit bias is going to be trained, is going to go across all of the disciplines in the entire criminal justice system. Everyone's going to go through implicit and explicit bias training as part of the model, and that was actually factored into, and Julie wants to expound on that, into the grant.
Excellent.
Yes, it was actually addressing racial, ethnic, and economic-based disparities was its own standalone strategy within the grant. Not only the implicit, explicit bias training, which is for all of the criminal justice agencies from the ground up, but also doing basically what amounts to an audit of our system to figure out where the disparities start and where they persist, and then figure out how best to address them. Anecdotally, I think we might know the answers to some of those questions, but it's important to back them up with data.
I was going to say a good starting point for that research would be the Daniel Moynihan report of 1965, in which they found that one of the main issues of the black community has nothing to do with economic issues, nothing to do with the fact that we're not getting enough money, nothing to do with the fact that segregation was happening, but rather the black culture was to blame for all of the problems that was going on. This is a mindset that many people hold, dates back to the eugenics movement, in which they were trying to say, like black people are different slightly than everyone else, as well as like every other race that's out there. So, I mean, I would definitely encourage, unless you have already, I don't know. I'm not really familiar with the research that you've done, but I would definitely
What is your major?
Political science.
No doubt. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you also for your testimony. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Gentlemen? You shouldn't have went after him.
Yeah, one of y'all got to follow.
Yeah, somebody got to follow him.
You really want me to go?
Go ahead.
No, let me go. Because I'm not going to take long.
State your name for the record, sir.
My name is Phil Lockett. And since I'm on TV, my life is in danger now. But anyway, because I'm a block captain. I've been a block captain for 45 years. We targets all over the place. But I want to thank the board for having this. Because I didn't think it was going to be this good. This is outstanding. I really commend you people for doing what you're doing today. You blew my mind. But Pennsylvania Senator Williams almost talked about it when he was talking about the schools here in Pennsylvania. There's a back door of no return in every school where the children can emancipate themselves at age 16, and they hit the street with no diploma, no work experience, no sponsors for anything, and the drug dealers pick them right up. And you wonder where the manpower is coming from. Now, I have a drug cartel on my block. For 45 years, we've been dancing. And they got a hold of one of my young boys, and because he cleaned up their area, and they gave him the money. And next thing I know, the boy's working against us now. Now he's trashing up the block. He's belligerent, messing with my car, stuff like that. So I told his mom, and he's in big time danger because his head done got spent around. What they do in my communities, they give him money, drugs, guns, and sex. And them boys don't go home no more. By the time he's 12 years old, he'll be in the police department, and when he turns 16, he's going to already be dropping out of school, and you're going to wonder why the pipeline is still active from school. We need to shut that back door of emancipation of the students that can drop out of school at will. You got more going out the back door than children graduating. And if we can modify it, let's say you want to drop out, they must have a job. They must have a sponsorship for something else other than just hitting the street to become part of the bad side of society. And that's all I got to say. And I appreciate you giving me your time, especially that young lady up there who kind of gave me a hard way to go, but I'm used to it because I'm old school. I've been a warrior since.
Don't feel bad. She gives me a hard way to go.
Yeah. We're gonna take her out to lunch. You know what I mean? But
it ain't just you.
I really appreciate you, Curtis. Man, I'm gonna get you on Facebook. You know, cause you doing a heck of a job.
Thank you so much.
You renewed my faith in city council.
Wow.
And I'm backing up.
I ain't there yet, but that's
Yeah,
good.
that's all right. You're a work in progress. You're a work in progress. Sir, bring the mic to you.
Yes. My name is John Anderson. I'm a member of the 3rd Regiment Infantry, United States Colored Troops, which is a reenactment group here in Philadelphia. And we represent the 11,000 soldiers that was trained up here at Camp William Penn, just up Broad Street here, which many of you don't know about, I'm sure. Anyway, we try to be a mentoring bunch of guys, and we're having difficulty doing that. And the difficulty is that when these young boys leave home, they've already come out of home with a negative attitude because they had a negative attitude in home. They're not encouraged because the people that they live with don't have any encouragement to give them. And what we found out about them was that the same thing holds true with the most of them.
So that's him. Are you done?
Huh?
Are you done?
No, I'm not. But
Go ahead.
if you want to go, we can go.
No, I don't want. No. You waited. We'll wait. You were patient. We're patient.
Well, I want to be heard too, you know.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Go ahead.
And everybody left, so I'll hold this for another time then.
All right. Okay. You can submit it in writing. And we appreciate you being patient.
Yeah.
If are there any other witnesses to testify on this hearing? Then, if not, this concludes our hearing of the Criminal Justice Reform Committee. Thank you all for your attendance. Held at the call of the chair.